Councilor Cornwell, will you please lead us in the flag salute?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. May we have roll call, please?
Councilor Cornwell?
Present.
Councilor Cabrales?
Here.
Councilor Carney?
Here.
Councilor Wilk?
Here.
Councilor Schaub?
Here.
Councilor Morris?
I'm here.
Mayor Lonergan?
Here. All present and accounted for. Thank you. I have a few announcements. With President's Day coming up next Monday, February 19th, City Hall and the library will be closed. Transit will be open, but under normal holiday hours from 8 to 3 o'clock that day, and the Aquatic Center will also be open, maintaining their regular hours from 6 to 10 in the morning and again 4 to 7 in the evening. I have a couple things that, a couple more announcements that happened Friday that I want to share that didn't quite make it to the agenda. First one is City of Woodburn, along with Church of Christ and Community Action, who we've been talking to for a couple months about working out a relationship with our shelter, have come to an agreement to take over the shelter, have come to an agreement with Church of Christ, and starting March 1st, we'll be operating the shelter with some extended hours, and they were going to spend a little time first doing some renovation and working there, but I want to thank the city for being part of that. Jesse coming off of medical leave and I'm sure serious dental work that you're hiding from. Thank you for being part of that and helping that come together. And Scott, also your involvement I know was big, but I'm very grateful that they were able to reach an accord. And I also want to thank the people that have worked that for years. It's been a very hearty, helpful volunteer group that has given a lot of time and effort putting this together, working with the church, and done a lot of good. So I don't ever want to forget the work that they did, and hopefully it will continue at a positive rate going forward. So I see that as all being good. Community Action, I believe, is going to come at our next meeting and make a presentation on what to expect when they take over the 1st of March. So we look forward to that. Another announcement that happened Friday that came through are very good Woodburn Chamber, that is another positive asset of Woodburn, makes their annual recognition and awards for the year. And our city administrator, Scott Derrickson, was recognized and going to be awarded the Distinguished Service Award for Senior First Citizen. So, Scott, congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor. I was very surprised and honored, really surprised. I think I was lured to that meeting Friday morning under false pretenses, so that I'd be there. But I was really surprised, and I've been doing a little research on the senior part, and I think it's
You qualify.
I think it's a typo. I think it's meant to be senior. It's the senior for citizens. Well, that's what I'm going with for now. And anyways, it was a real honor, and
so there will be a DSA banquet that is coming up. It'll be over in Mount Angel, which I think Republic Services is part of. I saw that you guys are sponsoring that. Thank you very much for that. But yes, Scott's been recognized for not just his position, but for many years being very active in the Masons, the Rotary, Chamber, all those in leadership positions, and obviously his leadership here in the city. So we're pretty proud and honored that you're recognized that way, Scott.
Well, thank you, Mayor, and I understand that there's a nomination process. I have no idea who nominated me, but I'm very grateful that they did. Thank you.
And you beat out some heavy hitters, I hear. There were a lot of nominations this year. So
I have no idea. I was completely caught off guard.
Okay, moving on. We do have a couple of appointments. We have Noah Carlson that is going to be appointed to the Budget Committee upon your vote. I've known Noah for many years. Noah was a Boy Scout when I was a Scout leader with my son, so I've known Noah for a long time. He currently is finishing up his bachelor's program at George Fox. He has been working for the Settlemyre House as their treasurer, fairly active in Woodburn and along that line. Strong interest in money, so keep an eye on him, Tony. So, any questions at all about that? If not, I'd entertain a motion to accept Noah to the Budget Committee.
So moved.
Second.
Moving second, all in favor, signify with an eye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. And the second one is Teresa Ibanez Estrada, who name was given to me by a member of our Planning Commission. Teresa is interested in joining our Arts Mural Committee. She has an interest in art. Longtime Woodburn resident, works for the school district, and proud graduate of Oregon State University, which on its own merit, guys, is enough to bring her on board. Not a duck, not a duck. Any questions at all about Teresa?
No.
Okay, then I would entertain a motion to adopt her.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, signify with an eye.
Aye.
Opposed? Moving on. We do not have any community government organizations. I do not have any proclamations, presentations. We did receive all a letter that I should say from Bev Kootenai. I'm assuming people's had any questions at all about that?
Did the committee that is on this get one?
Not yet. But since we were all on that committee,
Yes.
this is the beginning, and since it came to us, I just thought I'd make it for the record that we received it. Beverly used to be mayor of Hubbard,
Right.
and I appreciate her input and thoughts for our community center.
And I believe the next meeting for the community center is next Wednesday.
The 20th, I believe.
Yes.
Yep,
Not this Wednesday, but next week.
correct. So I'll just make, reference that we received that letter. So presentations, first one, Republic Services. Come on up. Our partner for many years here in Woodburn.
Thanks.
Good to see you.
Good.
Turn over, please, introductions, and it's all yours.
Is it on?
Yeah.
We have a glitch already?
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. My name is Cindy Rogers, and I'm the Municipal Relationship Manager for Republic Services. And I'm joined here today by Travis Comfort, our Municipal Contract Administrator, and Josh Harvey, our Operations Manager in Woodburn. Our presentation this evening is a review of the essential services we provide for the City of Woodburn in 2022. We will be back later in 2024 to present on the Recycling Modernization Act and ask council for a rate adjustment and review 2023.
Cindy, when do you think that might happen?
Fall.
Fall, okay.
Fall of this year, yeah. Republic Services has between 9 and 14 drivers servicing the City of Woodburn 5 times a week. 9 of those drivers live in Woodburn, plus we have 5 other employees that live in Woodburn. drivers at the curbs of over 6,100 homes, 10 times a month. We service trash once a week, yard debris with food waste once a week, and commingle recycling, glass, batteries, motor oil, and cooking oil every other week. Approximately 82,000 carts were picked up in 2022. As mentioned on the previous slide, we serviced over 6,100 single-family homes, nearly 60 multifamily customers, 336 commercial customers, and we did 37 industrial hauls, and that includes drop boxes and compactors. Here's a breakdown for residential services by cart size. As you can see, the 35-gallon cart is the most popular at 47%, and the 65-gallon is the second most popular at 28%. So that makes up nearly 75%. Here we have a year-over-year look at customer count by cart size. You can see that the customer count for residential grew from nearly 5,700 to over 6,100 over the last 3 years. That's almost an 8% increase in residential customers. This slide shows how many tons we picked up by residential material. We picked up over 1,000 tons of commingle recycling, nearly 5,200 tons of garbage, and over 3,300 tons of yard debris with food waste. Here is a year-over-year look at residential tons over the last 3 years. You can see that there was an increase in tons from 2020 to 2022 of 426 tons, which is only about a 5% increase. Remember a couple slides back, I mentioned that the residential customer count grew during the same time period by nearly 8%. So in 2020, each household averaged about 1.6 tons versus in 2022, each household averaged about 1.56 tons. That's just a small decrease per household. This slide breaks down the total of tons on the previous slide by percentages for each waste stream for the years of 2021 and 2022. You can see that the percentage of trash is very close year over year. The most significant change was in commingle recycling, and it's at 6%, but still pretty consistent year over year. And then I will pass it on over to Travis.
With the red light on?
It's on.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Lonergan and Council. I'm Travis Comfort, and I'm your Municipal Contract Administrator with Republic Services. I'm here to go over a brief overview of our general materials stream flows as they are currently, Oregon's recycling laws, which is the Oregon Opportunity to Recycle Act, and then the more recent Recycling Modernization Act. These are very dense topics, so we'll be back, as Cindy said, in a couple months to go over the RMA in great detail. But currently, as you can see on slide 9, your current commingle recycling is focused on paper and cardboard, plastic bottles and jugs, and then tin and aluminum. Those service items, or those listed materials, will expand in July 1st of 2025 with the Recycling Modernization Act. And the one key part about recycling that I like to hammer to anybody that I talk to about recycling is all these materials need to be empty, clean, and dry before you put them in your container. Next slide, please. In terms of curbside glass or residential glass collection, Marion County has kind of set the bar for the state. It allows you to also recycle household batteries, latex paint, motor oil, antifreeze, and cooking oil. Next slide, please.
Just a quick question. Can I put all those things in my curbside?
Glass bin.
I can put all those in there?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So the two caveats to that is, like, motor oil either needs to go back into a motor oil container or it needs to be labeled that it is motor oil. Same with cooking oil as well.
Do the batteries need to be in a separate container?
Batteries need to be in a 1-quart Ziploc container, and then lithium batteries need to be taped. So lithium batteries, if they come into contact with certain metals, will start fire, and that's primarily why Marion County was a leader in this, but it's the #1 cause of trash fires. So when you see a truck that caught on fire or a load that caught on fire, it's usually battery related. So,
Tape both sides.
yes.
Very educational, thank you.
Yeah. And as we get to later, whenever I'm tabling out at events, that's what I try to go over with people. And then we didn't get to put a little asterisk on this, but car batteries, residents of Woodburn can take for free to our depot 6 days a week. So they can actually recycle car batteries as well. Next slide, please. So one of the largest volumes of waste you can get out of your trash container is food waste. It is also the largest emitter of methane gas at the landfill. So by shifting that to your yard debris bin, you can sometimes scale back or go with a smaller trash service. One of the key points that our staff wanted me to bring up when I said I was going to talk about yard debris and food waste was that please no oils or greases in the cart. It's definitely a food waste, but there's just no liquids or any of those kind of materials in there. And that is the #1 contaminant that we do see in the yard debris cart.
Travis, where do you haul your yard debris?
That's to PRC just outside of Corvallis.
Still goes.
And there is also an asterisk on the pizza boxes because if there's no grease or food material on the paper cardboard box itself, you can recycle that in your commingle cart. If there is any sort of food residue, you can throw, 2 to 3 in your yard debris cart each week.
Are the K-cups for coffee grounds recyclable or not?
They are not. Okay, so this is our recycling depot. This is just barely over a mile down Front Street from here. And this is where residents of Woodburn can bring materials 6 days a week for free. That's Monday through Saturday, and it's 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. excluding holidays.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a gardener,
Yeah.
and what about flower pots? Is that a big no-no?
Black plastic?
Plastic, like, yeah.
Yeah. Currently, no plastics can go in the yard
Some
cart.
have that little triangle on the bottom, though.
Yes, and so starting next year with the RMA, some of those will be added to the commingle collection stream, and it'll be based on the number that it is, because those range from 1 to 6. So some are a plastic polymer base, and some are actually like a polystyrene based plastic. So it'll just, the RMA is supposed to simplify that stuff and make more of it recyclable.
So at this point, you prefer that they go in the general garbage?
Currently, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
So just a quick question, comment, that you have all of this listing online. You
Yeah.
can just click on to Woodburn Republic Services.
It's on
to
our
get the
Woodburn
up-to-date
Republic Services site.
information.
It's housed on the Marion County site, and then Marion County also has a site where people can put in whatever material they have, and then it'll list all of the locations in the county or surrounding area where you could take each of those items. So it'll do the location search for you too. Because there are some organizations that'll take like egg cartons or polystyrene or some of those rare items. So there's plenty of web resources for people to access that stuff. Solid waste is flow controlled in Marion County, and they've directed that to Covanta. They are currently nearing the end of their current working agreement, which will end in 3.5 months. That's June of this year. They are currently in talks with the county and state to potentially exercise a 5-year extension to their contract, and we will keep you posted on that.
What's that mean? That was a lot of fancy words that I didn't understand anything that you said besides they're negotiating a contract. Does that affect us at all?
It could affect the city of Woodburn in that waste might have to go somewhere else if Covanta did shut down. It's a little more economical to send it to other areas, but they're not like waste to energy or a burning facility.
Can you remind me what Covanta is?
It's the incinerator in Brooks, Oregon.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah, sorry
I know what
sorry to
that-
overstep that.
No, it's
Yeah.
okay. I just
So
didn't know.
Marion County controls our flow where the waste goes, so it has to go, there's a contract with Covanta right now that has to go there. So Covanta has kind of close to using up their lifespan, aren't they?
They're very near the end of their lifespan. There's new generations of scrubbers and burners and filters that could be implemented, but some of them, according to certain sources, are cost prohibitive. So that's kind of where they're at the tug of war between regulators and the company operating it. And they also burn more out-of-state waste than they do domestic waste as well.
And as a backup, Republic happens to own a landfill someplace south of us that
Yeah, so the landfill in Corvallis is cheaper per ton to take material to than to take it to the burner, but again, flow controlled, so it would still be up to the county to say where your materials can go. And that's similarly with the RMA starting next year, DEQ is going to say where your recycling materials have to go.
Is there any chance Metro might get involved in that and want it to go to a different location?
I don't see how they would have authority over another county.
Oh, Metro has authority over the whole state. They would try.
So what goes to our landfill right out here?
That's ash, isn't it? Isn't,
Yep.
Isn't
Yep, it
these-
is. It's the residue from Covanta goes here.
From where?
The residue from the burner
From the incinerator. yeah.
comes here.
Oh.
I mean, we can dump there, but then it's
Privately.
hauled to the burner,
And then brought back.
and then brought back.
just much smaller.
Yeah.
Comes back.
Right.
And Travis,
Yeah.
medical waste, still going to?
Still going to the burner.
Okay.
Yeah, medical waste is still household hazardous waste, and we don't handle that. So, as I mentioned earlier, the law itself that governs recycling in Oregon is the Opportunity to Recycle Act. This was passed in 1983, so it just turned 40 years old. It has had a couple additions since then. The way it works is that DEQ sets forth certain requirements for recycling standards and then waste reduction standards. Those are to be implemented based on the size of your city, and cities with 10,000 or more residents have to complete them all. So this is, on this slide, this is the first list of all the recycling requirements that Woodburn has to complete. And I've worked closely with Jim Rowe and Tommy in the back there for about 4 years on making sure that Woodburn is met and in compliance with these each year. Next slide, please. On slide 16, you'll see that these are the waste reduction efforts that we make in the city each year. This will be slightly tied into the RMA, the Recycling Modernization Act, starting next year because some of the education and outreach requirements will be taken on with that law. Let's see here. Okay, next slide, please. On this slide, you'll see two sections that I just cropped out of this year's report. I've submitted the initial draft to DEQ. We should have a final response back from them by the end of the month, and then so we should have all of the reporting for 2023 done before the end of March. Next slide, please. And so many of you might have remembered back in 2018, the recycling market had a very seismic event, more commonly known as China Sword or National Sword. This is when China stopped accepting global recycling commodities. And what that did is it kind of threw off the system in terms of how that service was paid for, essentially. Rebates on recycled materials allowed residential collection at near zero cost to the consumer. That is why the legislature and DEQ wanted to act swiftly to try to bolster the recycling economy. The main component to the Recycling Modernization Act is what they call producer responsible organization. So there's the people producing and making the plastic waste are going to be responsible for paying and help facilitate recycling that material. Next slide, please. And this slide, this is just a very clean, short timeline of what that 4-year period looked like. In 2018, DEQ and the legislature started convening working groups with private industry, material managers, local governments, and haulers to work out a lot of the nuts and bolts of this legislation. And then what passed is what is known as the Recycling Modernization Act, or Senate Bill 582. Next slide, please. And I did include all the websites at the bottom of my PowerPoint, so if you want to go back through, you can click those links and it'll take you right to the sources I got all my information from. On slide 20, this is the initial timeline that DEQ put together to roll out the act. So while the act was passed in 2021, we're still in the working group sessions where we're making the rules that will govern how those different parts of the Recycling Modernization Act actually function. The first bit of that was a needs assessment survey that staff helped me fill out for Woodburn. That put you in line for first round funding in terms of depot enhancement, curbside expansion of services, and since you applied for the funding, any sort of timelines or deadlines from the act. If funding isn't available when those due dates are in effect, Woodburn will be able to wait until that funding is available to expand those services. Cities that did not apply for funding will have to implement everything July 1st of 2025, so next year. Next slide, please. So this is kind of outlining the rulemaking process. So these are the initial rulemaking just finished just before Christmas this last year, and we're in the second round of rulemaking now. We should have an update or a completed draft of that by the end of March from DEQ. And that's why we're going to be coming back hopefully early this summer to kind of bring council up to speed on the whole Recycling Modernization Act. And here I'll pass it off to Josh Harvey to talk about our community engagement.
Okay, thank you, Travis.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I get to talk about the fun stuff. Not the recycling isn't fun, but it's a lot with everything coming up. Like Travis said, I'm Josh Harvey. I'm the operations manager here in Woodburn and for the rest of Marion County. Been with Republic for going on 27 years, coming up in May, so a little bit of experience. This list is honestly a small snapshot of what we do in the community. It's tough to come up with all the things we do because I'm terrible at taking notes all the time, and people call me and I tend to just say yes, we'll do it, because we love to be a partner in the community. So some of the ones we do, the bigger ones, is we partner with the city with the Fiesta. It's a big thing that we do. We do all in-kind services for that. I don't know the grand total, but we love being a partner with it. We love going to it. We have a lot of employees that live in Woodburn. 40% of our workforce that reports to me lives in the city of Woodburn. So it's a good thing. We do some fun things with Habitat. We got some pictures coming up of that. Chamber of Commerce, the Alma Awards. We are the title sponsor of that. We will be attending that March 15th. So we'll see you there. Yes. Some of the other things we do, Taste of Woodburn, Trunk or Treat, got some pictures of that coming up. Woodburn Career High School Day. We love attending that. We go with bilingual speakers, both Russian and Spanish, to recruit from within the community because we do pay a living wage, so it's nice to recruit from within. And we've gotten some really good candidates, so well done, City of Woodburn High School and both the Success School, gotten some really great candidates. Next slide, please. So this was super fun. We paired up with Habitat for Humanity. They reached out to us. A senior citizen living in senior estates, his wife could not come home from the hospital until they had a wheelchair ramp installed. So we partnered with them. We donated the box to haul away all the old construction materials, and we sent the guy in high vis, which I was a little worried about because he's one of our saltier employees, but he said that they were even saltier than he was. So he really enjoyed it and actually volunteered to go back another time. So we've partnered with them a couple times, and we will partner with them moving forward with any of their projects. It's called Ramps and Rails. Super cool project. Next slide. Trunk or Treat. We didn't get a good picture, so our employee there, he actually cut the bottom out of a recycle can and dressed up as a recycle can for Halloween. He's volunteered every year to go down and do this in his own free time. He brings his wife and his children with him because he loves to volunteer. And we hand out tons of candy. Those garbage cans are actually full of candy, and they are clean. They're brand new. They're not super disgusting.
That's a very popular event.
Yes.
There's a lot of kids doing it.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you for being part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a fun time. Next slide. Taste of Woodburn. Travis usually mans this. We post stuff down there. We have swag. We have information. We talk about the sustainability of our company.
Come say hi if you get down there.
Little kids love toy trucks. They love the garbage truck. We tend to lose them when they grow up, but when they're little, they love us. Awesome. What are the odds? Really? Yeah, just another awesome event that we like to participate in. Next slide. We just started going to this. Travis just went to this one. And we decided that it's actually a really good event. So we're going to start taking one of our Spanish-speaking employees with us. And just to see what we can do, get the word out there.
Good idea. Yeah, this is going to have quite a future.
It's a great networking event every month. They do it here and in Salem each month.
Good.
Yeah. So we'll continue that partnership. Next. Love Inc. This one's awesome. They do such great things in the community. I can't say enough nice things about Nancy and the rest of our team there. It's a pleasure for us to be able to donate anything we can to them. We've done the golf tournament, which I love because I like to golf, so it's kind of win-win for us. But the Love Inc. Gala as well. And if anybody hasn't heard of Love Inc., I would encourage you to sit down with Nancy and listen to them. They do amazing things, so we're very fortunate to be able to partner with them.
We're partners with them too. They're very important to our city. Thank you.
I agree. And next, this is, I think Jamie Jonk has me on speed dial with the alley. So hopefully she's still listening. The graffiti program. So we've partnered with Jamie for quite a few years on the alley cleanup. And this year, well, actually 2023, we partnered with her to help swap out every container in the alley downtown that had graffiti on it. We pulled every single container, we cleaned them, we repainted them, we branded them, and we put the address and the name of each business on there. And that was kind of at the request of code enforcement, so they knew who to contact when something got graffitied. It's a cool project, and we also volunteered to hold some of the graffiti kits, the cleaning kits at our office, because we are open 5 days a week. So anybody can come in and grab one from us. And that is an ongoing project with Jamie and Maricela as well. I saw her here earlier.
Couple months ago, they brought in some of your kits and showed us.
Did they?
Yeah, impressive.
Okay.
They told us about the program. So that's good. And also, I want to mention the alleys is a big improvement. That's something that has been ongoing for many years here in Woodburn, and I recognize the help and the work that you've done on that. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing we did was we offered up locking containers, because I know illegal dumping is an issue down there.
Yeah.
We will also be partnering with Jamie and Maricela on the spring cleanup down there. So we'll spend some time down there. We'll donate a box to help clean up, get it ready for summer. And on that, I'm going to pass it back to Miss Cindy Rogers.
Josh, how many cities around from your Woodburn office do you serve?
Number-wise, we do Aurora, Hubbard, Jervis, Mount Angel, Silverton, Almsville, Staten, Sublimity, parts of Clackamas County, and Marion County rural, and Scotts Mills.
And I know that you have similar relationships with those. Obviously not as good as Woodburn because we're your priority.
You're number one.
Thank you. But with everything you just showed us, it's impressive that you have those relationships with all those cities and still take good care of Woodburn. So thank you all for that.
Yeah, thank you.
We appreciate you guys.
Well, I'll wrap this up for you guys. So I'll briefly touch on the statement of income. Keep in mind, we will be back to cover the statement of income and expenses, table of expenses when we're back later this summer, later this year to request a rate adjustment. I just want to call your attention to the revenue. So revenue increased by over 14% from 2021 to 2022. This increase was not attributed to a rate adjustment or a rate increase of any kind. It was completely due to organic growth. So a large portion of that increase was from drop boxes and compactors, and we can attribute that specifically to the Amazon job.
Thank you. I was actually going to ask how your hauls have increased since, I mean, not just Amazon, but there's a lot of growth going on around the town. And so I'm assuming that industrial has risen quite a bit.
Correct.
That
Yep.
shows that. So
That's,
good.
that's definitely the line of business where we've seen a significant increases from all the construction going on in the city.
What do you anticipate for Amazon when they open up? What do they have for sort of compactors, obviously? But
Yeah, they'll all be compactors. The majority of it will be recycling.
Really?
They're a pretty green company. The only real info we have so far is the Salem branch has one down there, and they run about 6 hauls a day.
Really?
Majority of it is cardboard. They are all compactors. So we're assuming this one's a little larger, so we're probably 10 hauls a day,
Yeah.
depending on seasonality.
Is it fair to say then that the Amazon project grew your revenue by 14% during the construction phase? Or is that all construction, including Amazon?
All construction.
All including, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
not exclusive, yeah.
Okay, very good.
That, yeah, that would
That,
help.
yeah, that makes sense.
So again, I won't spend too much time on the table expenses because we'll be back later this summer, but I just want to draw your attention to the increase in disposal and recycling. You know, Travis touched on what's been going on with recycling. And so it went up 21% from 2021 to 2022. These expenses are, you know, they're not in our control and they're driven by the market. So just wanted to point that out. And then labor also went up 21%, and truck and equipment went up almost 17%. All right, so just to wrap this up, so as I mentioned at the start of the presentation, we plan on being back in early spring to do more of a deep dive into the Recycling Modernization Act. You know, we want to make sure that you guys are aware of what's going on. This doesn't go into effect until July, but you know, it's a lot to digest. So we'll be back in spring. And then in late summer, we'll be back to present and request a rate adjustment. And then finally, in fall of this year, we'll be back to review 2023. Lastly, I just want to let council know that Republic Services has a charitable foundation that gives millions of dollars to nonprofits every year. So I encourage all the nonprofits in Woodburn to reach out to me, and I'll happily help them through that process. And I just want to say thank you so much for your time today, and congratulations to you, Scott.
Any questions from the council?
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I had one quick question.
Go ahead.
I like the bullet points for the recycling, because everybody's asking all those questions.
Yeah.
So I jumped on the website. I can't find that list, and that could be me. I'm pretty good at navigating these things, but is it on there somewhere?
Which slide were you referencing?
Just all the different things you can recycle, curbside, commingled versus the glass. Because I think that's what everybody wants to do. A, they're doing it right. B, I can put it in here. The pizza box and the green recycling, that's a good tip.
Yeah, I'll send all the links to Jim Rowe and have him
Okay.
circulate those for everybody.
Thank you.
On
I
that
appreciate it.
note, do you happen to have like magnets that people can put on their
that'd be good.
their fridges? Because one of my friends went through your class. I think there's like a class.
The
that you
master
can-
recyclers,
Yes.
yeah.
And I asked her because I wanted that, and she's like, no, they don't have that. And I was like, well, I think that's a really good, especially when you're doing community events. I think it's a good for community members if it's in like English, Spanish, Russian, even like indigenous languages. I think it would be perfect because I mean, my family wouldn't know what to recycle or what to not put in certain things. So yeah, it's just a suggestion if you're not doing so already.
Yeah.
I think the Master Recycler program is through Marion County, so those magnets that I think that you're talking about are through Marion County.
No, I asked her if they had
Okay.
them, and she said that they didn't.
They don't have
No,
Marion County.
so I'm just saying
Yeah.
that suggestion for future.
Yeah,
It
we
would
can get some more.
Yeah.
You can let Marion County know that for sure.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good to know, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any plans on electrifying your fleet?
Probably not here because we're so spread out in rural and hills. Maybe at some point we may get a couple for local, but
It's a
Wilsonville is going.
expensive venture.
Yeah, and if it was feasible, we would go down that road, but because we're so rural, they just don't have the range to handle the hills and the distances currently with the technology. Yeah.
So the Charitable Foundation that gives money to organizations, how do we get in contact with them? Do we go through you? I got a community center project for you. Oh, yeah.
We've talked.
Okay, very good.
Yep.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
Someone's already on top of that.
Very good, thank you.
We're
I just want to get it on the record.
Yeah, good job.
Thank you.
You know, I just wanted to acknowledge the folks that work for Republic, and since you're here, and I want to thank you. Hard workers, very nimble when we have weather events. They're pretty
Yeah.
good about, being supportive. And on the street where I live, they've been just heroic this past 3 weeks. I live on Blaine Street, and half the street is torn up, and we still get our trash picked up. So very thankful for that. I think 4 in the morning they came last week, just to get through before the workers.
Yeah.
We work with a lot of great people, so.
So it's no secret that I have a history with Republic and aware of the relationships that have gone between United Disposal and Allied and Republic. And I just want to say that it's a pleasure to see you carrying on the family aspect that has been so good to Woodburn for years. Yeah, and yeah, throughout the whole line, everything you do. So, like Mark said, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. So, moving on, we have a presentation from Liberty House. Gentlemen.
I still work for the city. I don't work for Liberty. At least I don't work for them, at least. So.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, good evening, Mayor, City Council, Jesse Cuomo, Community Services Director. I just wanted to kick this off a little bit before Liberty House gets going. We're going to, across this next year, bring in each of our partners. We actually have Love Inc. in the room, ironically enough. From the Family Resource Center. We're going to try to bring in each partner to kind of speak to what they do and how the Family Resource Center has been an asset to them. And I wanted to, I know many on the council kind of understand this Family Resource Center concept and how it came to be, but I kind of wanted to share that for the record and the general public as well, just to kind of lay the stage. I won't do this every time we have a presenter, but I thought for this first one it made sense to kind of lay the groundwork and then let Liberty House tell you about all the amazing work they do. I cannot give them enough justice by talking about it by myself. So to start out, in 2019, the city leadership, some of you are on council, as well as Scott and others, were noticing a significant deficit when it came to social services here in North County. Many of our clients or many of our community members or their clients were having to travel to Portland, Salem, and things like that to get services. As you can imagine, that creates quite a strain on folks that are already in kind of a vulnerable state, but financially, as well as kids missing school for long durations or whatever the case may be. And so the concept of kind of housing multiple nonprofits in a singular location became, I believe it was a council goal at the time, to create a resource hub. And so following our tenancy in the 970 Cascade location, when we were doing the remodel here on City Hall, that's where we were housed most of our operations. It made sense for the council and the city to kind of hold on to that tenancy of that building even when we moved back, because we were hoping to be able to purchase that building. Thanks to McKinsey and Jamie Junk, who were able to, and I believe actually Renata helped with that grant as well when she was with the COG, to be honest, all helped to secure a $1.5 million CDBG grant in which we bought that building. And so that allowed us about 6,500 square feet of usable space for multiple tenants. We have 7 tenants in there now: Love Inc., Mid-Willamette Valley Community Action, Center for Hope and Safety, Interface Network, Options Counseling, Safety Compass, and then we also have Liberty House, who you're going to be hearing from tonight. So in 2020, kind of gearing up toward that, we did a needs analysis. So we didn't just kind of throw ideas in the air. There was actually a detailed needs analysis done by a consultant to identify these needs. They went out and did polling with different community groups, worked with the school district and several other partners who are working with community members on a regular basis to really identify the needs. And that really guided us doing the outreach in to fill the spaces. And so I actually had the pleasure of helping navigate that piece of it and contacting several of these wonderful nonprofits to do that once we had that needs analysis, and kind of identifying nonprofits that really that correlated with the need that was there. And so that's how we came to those current 7 tenants. They all kind of fall within that scope of that needs analysis in one fashion or another. And then in 2022 is when the space finally really kind of fully was housed. Every space was leased. We do keep it at a very low cost rent. I believe right now it's 66 cents a square foot. That covers electricity, gas. It covers landscaping, covers your custodial, and then there's a small portion of their rent each month that goes into a contingency fund in case we have any like HVAC events or roofing kind of things like that with the building. So it is really not the city's interest to make it a profitability piece for the city, really more about providing additional service into our community. And where I think I'm most proud of this whole project is due to the foresight of the council and the city leadership. I think it's been a slow roll at first because it's really hard for nonprofits to expand instantaneously, right? You need funds to match it, just like any kind of business organization, but you need those funds to be able to expand. But they made that initial investment into the spaces. Hey, we're gonna do 1 day a week up here, but we want this space. It's a good deal. We want to expand services. And Liberty House will get into what they're doing, but several of these nonprofits have actually really honed in on finding more grant funds, more donors, and things like that to expand their services here. So it's not like they're just housing, taking up space for no reason. They're actively trying to support North County. And Liberty House is a perfect example of how giving someone the foothold and the support to kind of get rolling, especially a nonprofit, at the level of Liberty House and kind of what it's blossomed into, and they'll talk about that. So I'm happy to answer any questions about the facility itself from an operations standpoint. The tenants are all fantastic. It's really great to be able to work with these folks on a regular basis. But if you have any questions on that side, I'm happy to answer them. If not, I'm going to turn it over to the good folks at Liberty House.
Any questions, Jesse? Thank you. Gentlemen.
Thank you. Can we move the next slide? For those of you who may not be familiar, Liberty House is our local children's advocacy center serving Marion and Polk counties. So we're a resource for the community, especially when there are concerns of abuse and neglect.
Before you get too far, Kyle, want to introduce yourself?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
For the record.
Take that. My name's Kyle Tarr. I'm the Prevention Program Director at Liberty House. And children advocacy centers like Liberty House help ensure coordinated care and collaborative response to minimize trauma for children when there are those concerns of abuse. So Liberty House's 3 core services are the assessment, healing, and prevention of child abuse and neglect. So as the Prevention Program Director here today, I'm gonna share about our prevention services, which our space at the Woodburn Family Resource Center has been a satellite office for our prevention services. So what we do is we provide free child abuse prevention and online safety education for the community in English and Spanish. So that's for children, parents, families. Child abuse can be a very difficult and sensitive subject. And that's why it's so important to make it safe to talk about. And that's one of the things that we do with our prevention services. So, through providing this free education, presentations, training opportunities, we can empower adults. We can inspire change and provide the necessary support and protection for children. So our prevention team has been working out of the Woodburn Family Resource Center for coming up on 2 years now. We're here Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And this location has been really important for us. It's enabled us to establish our presence, and it's helped us become more ingrained in our local community. And we're really proud to be part of Woodburn. As a result of the Family Resource Center, we're reaching new families. We're training parents, as well as people who work directly with youth at child care centers, schools, our local organizations. And in fact, last year at our annual luncheon, one of our speakers was the director of a local daycare center who delivered just a really beautiful bilingual speech in English and Spanish, really sharing about the impact and importance of this type of education. So with our presence here, multiple days per week, we're able to, make connections, with families, with organizations. Really an essential part of our prevention services is building community. And, actually later this month, we're going to be hosting in English and in Spanish our cell phones and children best practices training at the Woodburn Public Library. So we're actually going to do a prevention series here leading up to Child Abuse Prevention Month in April, providing this education for, parents, for adults, for all community members. And child abuse is actually incredibly common. It thrives in silence. And so through our work with the community, we let everyone know that we all play a role, that child abuse is largely preventable, that healing is possible, that you can make a difference. Every one of us in this room can make an incredible impact as a positive, safe adult for children. So together, we can change hurt into hope. And, that's what we do. So we like to say that our prevention trainings are for anyone with a heartbeat. Anyone who cares about kids, who wants to learn more about how we can protect them and help keep them safe. So our presence here at the Family Resource Center, we've been able to, make connections with parents, provide presentations to local schools, to attend all sorts of different, fun community events, family outreach. It's really amazing for us to be able to have these opportunities to talk face-to-face, one-on-one with parents, with families. Because as I mentioned at the beginning, we're a resource for the community. So with our consistent presence at the Family Resource Center, we're creating and strengthening our connections in Woodburn and in North Marion. So this has helped us, grow and nurture strong roots. And so now I'll turn it over to Bruce, who will share more about the continued growth of our services here in Woodburn and with Liberty House's new medical clinic.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. For the record, Bruce, pardon me, I've got a frog in my throat tonight, so I apologize. I'm Bruce Anderson. I'm Deputy CEO of Liberty House. And we could, on the next one. So I get to talk a little bit about our Liberty House Woodburn Clinic, which I want to just start off by saying how much we have greatly appreciated the support from the city of Woodburn. Y'all really just made this whole project come together. And but before I do that, I do want to say it's great to see Councilor Carney again before you, I think, move on. So anyway, great to see you, sir, and wish you the best.
We appreciate him here too. Well, we got him.
So want to talk a little bit. We're going to kind of pause here for, thank you. This is a little bit strange. Anyway, first of all, thank you, huge thanks, but also especially I want to really thank Scott Derrickson too, and Jesse Cuomo. You guys have, these two guys have just been outstanding folks to work with. Even before I got to Liberty House, I just so appreciated the staff at City of Woodburn, and so just you guys are awesome partners and really do appreciate your support very much. So we really appreciated the invite to come be a part of the Family Resource Center, so that's been really helpful in getting our services, as Kyle outlined, up here into to Woodburn and North Marion County communities. But then this whole idea we got about, hey, how about bringing a clinic up to the city of Woodburn? And really got some great encouragement, some financial support, and that really helped us as we've moved forward in opening a clinic up here. We found a great location. That's the outside of the building there, as you can see. I'm going to get into a little bit about the inside, but that really helped us kind of open our clinic, expand our trauma-informed counseling services up here as well, which I'll get into in just a little minute. And I do have just a few slides to kind of just run through our new clinic location. So I want to give you an outline of the project. First, do a little bit of real boring layout of map of the entire space there, and then I want to do a real quick fly through before and after slides, just to give you a kind of a glimpse of what that space looks at. So next one, please. So here's the really one of the boring slides here for you, but this really gives you kind of the genesis for how this whole project started. Again, really appreciate Woodburn kicking this whole thing off and inviting us to come extend and get our clinic services up here as well. So we went through, started with this idea, and how do we get this going here? And I want to just, the one thing I don't want to just throw that out there and just say that's nothing, not for nothing, but that really facilitates bringing our essential services of child abuse assessment into this community, as well as our trauma-informed mental health counseling services for kiddos. Plus, it really helps extend our services and outreach to the Spanish-speaking communities of Marion County in and around Woodburn. It's a priority for Liberty House. We have bilingual speakers at every key staff position throughout our organization, and we're really excited about bringing our services in this regard here. So we proceeded through the design work. We went through a lot of that was a lengthy process, I must say, but went through permitting, the remodeling process, and finally through our final inspection. And now we're at the point where we're moving in equipment and furniture and outfitting. As a matter of fact, this very week, we're getting our interview and observation rooms outfitted so that we're going to be able to really get in and start having exams and conducting forensic interviews. So it should be ready here at some point. We're looking at maybe later in March, I think, just to kind of give us an outside time frame here. And then, of course, on April 5th, we're going to be doing a ribbon cutting. I've already reached out to Scott about that, and then I will be getting to you all an invitation in the near future. So we're putting that together. So if I could have the next one, please. So this is really, we've taken the second floor of that, it's the Legacy Diagnostic Imaging Building, right on Ray J. Glatt Circle. With the back side, you're not going to be able to get there, but whomever's going to have a great office looking at, speaking of golf, the OGA golf course there. But nonetheless, this just is a fantabulous facility. It's really enabled us to get this facility outfitted. It was a great healthcare facility. So we've gone through and just taken what you see here before you. We'll have two clinic wings, north and a south clinic wing that I've called them. We've got our Hope and Wellness counseling services that we're going to be doing there, as well as some administrative support. That's pretty important stuff. So if I could have the next slide, please, and I'm just going to try and go through these as best I can. So we came into this space and we got a great space here, but it's going to need some work. This is our main reception entrance area. On the left slide there, you can see it will be our main reception area. And on the right, looking down the hallway, you'll see in a minute, that's going to be our clinic wing, the one that I referenced here earlier. Next slide, please. And this is the after photographs here. So we've been able to we needed to securitize that front entrance area. So at the top of the stairwell and the elevators, folks will come first to that main reception area to check in, and then we'll figure out whether they're here to have a counseling session, or they're there for a clinic exam appointment. Next slide, please. We're going to stick on that Hope and Wellness side for just a moment. We had some interesting walls up there that were just frankly not workable, so we demoed those. And if I could have the next one, we were able to create two great offices that'll be for two. We'll have three altogether counselors up there that will be able to see kiddos for our trauma-informed counseling services. Next slide. Also, we thought it might be good to take a look at, maybe we can outfit a conference room up there. So the next slide here, we had two exam rooms, and we created that conference area, and that's going to be great for us bringing together our MDT partners, multidisciplinary partners in law enforcement, the DA's office, DHS, and other partners as well, so we can get together for meetings. We're seeing if we might be able to explore even having a new MDT for just in this area as well. Next slide.
I'm sorry, MDT?
Multidisciplinary team.
Okay.
And so MDT consists of our law enforcement partners, representatives from the DA's office, DHS, the county. We'll have school district personnel there. It just depends on what the case is that is brought to MDT. But I do want to point out, whenever there is a case of potential child abuse, there is a 1-800 line for folks to call in for that. But if folks or kiddos are referred to Liberty House, we'll make sure they get in and get scheduled for an exam so they can get properly checked out. This is our main clinic check-in area. And if you can go to the next slide, please. This is kind of the before. We had a big open wall there, and that's not going to work too well for us. So what we did on the next slide, you'll see we installed a wall, created a better waiting area for a family to come into. Plus, this area also, if you can see that door on the right there, on the way back with the window there, that's what we call our family support room. So after a family comes in, their child will be examined and potentially go through a forensic interview. And then afterwards, there will be a consultation with the family in one of those family support rooms. And it's also worth pointing out that when a kiddo comes to Liberty House for an exam, this is not like your 15-minute medical exam that we all are accustomed to. We go at the child's pace, so that might take 4 hours in some cases, but we have to make sure that the child is comfortable and at ease with telling us what exactly happened. So that's very important to us.
What's the average age of children you see?
Oh boy.
What do we deal with here in Woodburn?
That is a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. I can tell you that we see children ages newborn through age 18. Okay. So, and in some cases, we'll see kiddos older than 18. They're usually, I think, developmentally disabled kids, but it's a age appropriate type of thing. So.
Thank you.
Oh, yes, sir.
And I can just add that annually there are more than 10,000 unduplicated victims of child abuse and neglect in Oregon, and it's about 41% of those child victims are 5 years old and younger. So that is a big concern. There's such a sizable portion of our most vulnerable population that doesn't have that ability necessarily to voice what's happened to them. Right. So it's just so important for these types of services.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. Yeah, I would just point out that at every stage of how Liberty House's operations are put together, we want to be very mindful. We're dealing with really traumatized children, and so we just are very careful and cautious about how we proceed with them.
Well, I'm sure it takes a while to get their trust before they talk. So
that's
a big part of it.
Yes, sir. Yeah, absolutely, Mr. Mayor. That's a big reason why. I kind of pointed out some of these exams will take 4 hours, or perhaps longer. But again, we need to go at the child's pace so that we're sure to make sure that they're okay, that our diagnosis is okay. And then also the whole forensic interviewing process is absolutely essential too. So next slide, please. So kind of moving to the our South Clinic wing area. Here again, we had this is kind of an exterior area. We said, this is just not going to work out. We got to open this up a little bit. So we have this nice, great nurse-type staff station right there. That's on the left, and I'm sorry. Can you go back one, please? Thank you. That's on the left is that one exterior area outside of our exam rooms, and also what the interview room is. And the one on the right is the exam room. And now, if we can, so that's kind of the after effect here. We removed that big exterior stand-up desk area. And on the right, we converted that exam room into one of our interview rooms. And so this particular part of our clinic area is actually the one I referenced earlier that we're having outfitted with our interviewing and observation room equipment. There's the cabinet there in the corner there, that houses a microphone as well as a camera. When the interviewer has the child in there, again, it's all about making sure that they're comfortable with their surroundings. So they'll walk up to that, open the door up just to make sure they can see what's going on. And hey, is this okay if we do this? Just like our doctors will say, I'm going to, like say they want to listen to their heart. Okay, hey, I've got this stethoscope and I need to listen to your heart. Is that okay if we do that? So always, making sure that the child is comfortable at every phase of this process. Next slide, please. This is our kind of our north, we have the south clinic area. Now we've got the north area. So we felt we wanted to make sure we had a separate waiting room for that area. We'll be able to handle a family in each of those areas. Again, we need to maintain that separation and the confidentiality as well. So kind of the before and after there on that waiting area in the next room, or next slide, I'm sorry. So this is one area. This project actually gave us an opportunity to do something a little bit different with this. This particular bathroom is adjacent to one of the exam rooms. And this was an opportunity that we thought would be great to be able to bring in something to that. And I'll show you on the next slide here. And that is, we were able to install a shower with that, and that's going to enable us to be able to conduct SANE exams for when we've got a sexual assault that needs to be examined immediately. So what we had to do there is our contractor had to kind of grind out the floor there to create that drain area. This is an ADA accessible shower as well. But again, is making sure that we have that, and like I said, this project just enabled us to be able to bring in this attribute to this project, and this will just an additional element that will be, I think, very helpful to the community as well. Next slide, please. Okay, and then the final area I'm going to kind of go into is again this north area where we demoed that nurse stand. We had this weird little storeroom over there, and so the next slide will show you that we got rid of that, so it opened that room area up. And what you're seeing there on the right side is that's going to be our new observation room for that North Clinic area. So we just expanded that. So, we got a lot of great police officers that have big utility belts, and so we want to make sure that they're accommodated well when we have them there. And the next slide will show you kind of a before and after on our interview room in that part of the wing there. So you can kind of see we took that exam room that was there on the left, and then we've got the new interview room there with the cabinet that's going to house that cabinet on the right. Again, this is that's next slide, please. And I'm going to wrap up here with just happy to answer questions, but I do really want to just emphasize how important that this project is, not that enables Liberty House to bring our essential services to Woodburn as well as North Marion County communities. It's really important that we, as Kyle had talked about, getting the word out about child abuse generally, so that we can do a better job preventing it as a society, but also enabling us to be able to examine and help the kids that are unfortunately going through that terrible time in their life. So I do also have to point out that we are hiring for our Woodburn Clinic as well, and would just direct, if you know of any good candidates, we would welcome them. Just go to libertyhousecenter.org. We've got all of the positions posted there, and we're just really appreciative, again, of this community's support that helps us be able to get our clinic services here.
What kind of people are you looking for?
I'm sorry?
What are you hiring? What type of personnel?
Well, several. I have to go direct you to our website, but I know council. If you know of any, Kyle, you can chime in here. Right. But I wouldn't. I know that we're always looking for good mental health counselors that are have that training. Okay. Looking for. I think we may are looking for nurses and physician's assistants. Okay. Again, you know, and just on that point, the medical personnel that we have at Liberty House are they're specially trained in a subspecialty of pediatric medicine. So this is a real specialty. And so, you know, we want to make sure we get the right people for those roles. Also, one other thing, our position, and that is we are looking for a bilingual community outreach coordinator position that will enable us to make sure that we're getting in touch with this community and all the great organizations here.
Makes sense.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I wanted to jump in a little bit on what Jesse had to say. As he was talking, I started reflecting back to the City Council recognizing during the pandemic that our calls for child abuse and domestic violence, substance abuse calls to the police department and elsewhere really skyrocketed during the shutdown. And we became acutely aware that there was a lack of service that was available for particular vulnerable segments of our community. The council specifically identified Liberty House as a service we wanted to see a greater presence in so that more people in our community could access their services. And we allocated some ARPA funds, some money to back up our request. And then in this year, the city also made a financial contribution, although I know it's very small compared to the size and scope of this project, which really represents a significant financial investment in Woodburn. And so I think the council, I want the council to know that the concern was that the nonprofits would come and then leave when the ARPA funding dried up. But Liberty House has made a substantial investment in Woodburn that's going to last well beyond our limited run and beyond the funding that the city could provide substantially so. So thank you so much for that. And you know, it feels good to see that that issue was identified, the council was able to direct us, and that we were able to have Liberty House create such a presence in our community to serve, you know, the people we care about, some of our most vulnerable.
I agree. Unfortunately, you've shown there's a need for Liberty House to be here, but without question, I'm familiar with your company too. You're the right company to be here to help, and I appreciate that. So you're going to be expanding your days then from 3 days a week to more, or what's the plan there?
Possibly we're expanding our team. So when we had first started 2 years ago, our prevention team was 2 members. It was myself and our bilingual prevention coordinator. So now with this new bilingual community coordinator position that we're hiring, our prevention team is going to expand to 5 people. So I'm already up here multiple days per week. We're going to continue our presence here at the Family Resource Center. And so we do serve Marion and Polk. So kind of have, you know, a foot in each area. But, you know, this has really been just a really incredibly important part to,
So you're going to stay at the Family Resource Center also? Mm-hmm. I
yep.
did not, was not aware of that part. Okay, good.
Yep.
If I might, Mr. Mayor, going back to one of my slides there, we in July signed a 6-year lease on that space. So that's 9,000 square feet, that entire second floor of that facility. So that space really
probably more than 66 cents per square foot.
Slightly.
Yeah.
Well, I must point out City of Woodburn was incredible incredibly supportive. We also had some amazing private sector foundations step up to the plate and really help us in a big way. And so this is really great too, because we're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. So, you know, Liberty House is probably the second largest children's advocacy center in Oregon, right after CARES Northwest, which serves Multnomah and Washington counties. But, you know, we're really committed to this region, which includes Marion and Polk counties. But we're just so appreciative of being able to be up here and serve this community as well as the rest of Marion County. So.
Questions, comments?
No, I just want to say that this is really a pleasant surprise. I appreciate your energy and your commitment, and I'm so excited to see you guys come in with so much, guns a-blazing, and you're both on board completely, and it's just wonderful. I'm just so happy about that.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. In the 10 years that I served as a CASA, working with foster children in Marion County, your organization was my most effective partner. Thank you very much for coming to Woodburn.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have one more comment. I forgot to mention when mentioning the Whole Family Resource Center that the investment that the council and leadership made served over 1,500 people last year out of that location, just to put that in perspective. And granted, not all of those locations are fully staffed at this time. They're, kind of piecing it together still. And so it's a very significant impact in a short amount of time. So just thank you.
And I know you do have a good relationship with our police department. I say with our chief here, I want to thank him for that relationship too.
Yep, thank you so much. One point I did want to kind of circle back with you. You had asked about hours. Hours for our Woodburn clinic. We have an intake department that does, take in all of the calls, and they have to really coordinate all of our resources, our medical personnel, and so forth around that. So we do actually have some staff folks that we moved into that facility that are there. But it just depends on, we don't have necessarily walk-in traffic, if you will.
Got it.
But we will schedule those services. They go through our intake department, and then everything gets coordinated accordingly. So we'll, have folks on site for those special appointments. So, all right.
Well, we welcome you to Woodburn.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
Gentlemen,
it.
keep up the good work.
Thank you.
So we do have one more presentation, and this obviously will be a very short one because Tony's talking. Our quarterly investment report. Mr. Turley, it's all yours.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Council. Tony Turley, the Finance Director. Before I turn the time over to Lauren for the presentation, I just wanted to talk a little bit and just remind you that the quarterly report that we'll be looking at for PFM is only a portion of our investment strategy. We also have approximately $42 million in our local government LGIP investment pool. And so that $42 million takes care of our short-term needs and our operating expenditures. And then the $50 million that Lauren will be talking about is some of it is still within the year, but that's more of our long-term investment strategy. And I remember when I started here and right before we hired Lauren as our investment advisor, our return on investment with the LGIP was operating somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 basis points, so less than 1%. And in the 4 years that I've been here, and as we've invested this strategy, and we go through this, you'll see that our average return now is approaching 5%. And so it's been a very strategic investment. And, you don't read the market, but we did go into this investment strategy at the right time. And it's been very beneficial. And Lauren's partnership with us, or PFM's partnership with us, has been incredible. And so without any further, unless you have other questions concerning the short-term investment, I'll turn the time over to Lauren to go over the performance.
Okay.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Thank you, Tony, and thank you, City, for your partnership. I agree with Tony. We certainly don't want to time the market, but the timing for investing was very fortuitous and beneficial to the city, and commend the staff for all their hard work with cash flows. I'm going to share my screen and go through just a few pages of the very extensive quarterly investment report. but hopefully y'all can see that in front of you. I'm going to make sure you can see that a little bit bigger. So before I get into the specifics of the investment report with respect to the city's investment holdings, I wanted to go through the economic snapshot.
We lost the report. We're seeing a blank screen.
My apologies. Let's try this again. How about now?
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you for letting me know. So I'll just give you a quick economic snapshot. Again, this report is for the period ended December 31st. Granted, we are in the new year, so I'll give you a little bit of update there as well. But the fourth quarter, in terms of the economic characterization, was certainly inflation was still at the forefront. And the Federal Reserve, the markets continued to look to the Federal Reserve and how they were going to respond to changes in inflation, changes to the economy. The economy actually held pretty strong. I've highlighted a few numbers here on the page with all these numbers here, but the unemployment rate remained at 3.7%, which is fairly strong considering. We also had an increase in the number of people who were hired for the quarter. It's about 450,000 jobs, but that has slowed and moderated compared to the third quarter, which was in the neighborhood of 650,000 jobs. So we're starting to see a little bit of moderation there. From an economic growth perspective, when we talk about economic growth, we refer to GDP, or gross domestic product. That's an aggregation of all the goods and services in the United States. And in the prior quarter, for the period ended September 30th, we were close to 5% growth. And in the fourth quarter, in the calendar quarter, we're 3.3%. So again, we're starting to see a little bit of economic growth waning, and we're also seeing inflation starting to wane as well. So about 4% inflation, which is still high historically, but when we think back to June of 2022, inflation hit a peak of 9%. So we're starting to see inflation and prices come down, starting to feel a little bit more easing in all of our wallets and purses, if you will, as we go to the grocery stores, we go to the gas station, but we're still not at that target rate of 2% where the Federal Reserve would like to see everything and like to see prices come down. But as interest rates, as inflation started to come down, the Federal Reserve started to halt their increases in the overnight Fed funds rate. So as we started to see inflation peaking back in 2022, the Federal Reserve responded relatively quickly and started to raise that overnight interest rate to slow economic growth. So back in December, we saw the Federal Reserve halt at their range of 5 to 5.25%. Which has certainly impacted everything from credit card borrowing rates to mortgage rates to financing rates for cars. So we've certainly seen those prices and the cost of borrowing increase pretty substantially. Well, the Federal Reserve is starting to see numbers where they feel comfortable holding steady on that overnight federal funds rate. And actually in December started to indicate they may want to start decreasing that rate in 2024. When that news started to hit the markets, we started to see interest rates on fixed income securities, like those we purchased on behalf of the city for its portfolio, we start to see those interest rates come down. I'm going to turn to the next page here. And if we look at this chart on the lower left-hand side of our page, U.S. Treasury yields, we'll see that across individual maturities from 3 months all the way out to 30 years, although we only invest in that 0 to 3 year area part of for maturities related to fixed income securities. But I do want to show you that across the maturities, we saw interest rates or yields decline on fixed income holdings in as much as almost 1% for a 2-year treasury. We started to see that come down, just on the heels of the market anticipating that the Federal Reserve will lower interest rates in 2024. They met last week. They did not lower rates at that meeting. However, they continued to indicate if they see inflation continue to ease and moderate and growth continue to moderate, that they will likely start to lower that rate, maybe not in March, but likely in May. So the good news for the city is that we have locked in yields at some rates at like 5% and even 5.25% to 5.5%, as Tony has indicated, and that will benefit the city for years to come as we've locked in those rates, even as interest rates start to trend lower. So I'm going to turn us now to look at the city's portfolio. And if we look at the city's portfolio at the end of the year, of the calendar year, you can see it's well diversified amongst fixed income securities and different sectors, U.S. Treasury securities, federal agency securities, and also very high quality short-term and intermediate-term corporate debt. So not to be confused with equity holdings, the city's investment policy, as well as the Oregon revised statutes, prohibit equities in your in your operating fund portfolio, which we're talking about tonight. As Tony indicated, there's about $51 million at the end of the year. The city added about $10 million to the portfolio in the fourth quarter, increasing that to $51 million, and we were able to put those funds to work, like I said, with yields at about 5 and 5.25%. The average maturity of the portfolio, a little over a year, about 1.25 years, and the average yield of the portfolio is close to 5%. When I talk about the average maturity or duration distribution of the portfolio, we're looking at maximum maturity out to about 3 years. So 0 all the way out to 3 years or is that maturity area. We work very closely with Tony and his team to identify where some of those maturity buckets should be, not just based on the market, but also based on the city's cash flow needs. On the last page I'm going to cover for this evening, but happy to answer any questions you might have. As you saw, we have a 0 to 3 year maturity for the portfolio, and that's also the city's benchmark. When I say benchmark, we look at it, we compare the portfolio relative to an industry standard benchmark, the 0 to 3 year U.S. Treasury Index. So that gives you an indication as a council, as the member of the public, to take a look at the portfolio relative to this benchmark. If we're too high or too low, that should raise a red flag. For the most recent quarter, the portfolio returned a 2.1%, which was in line with the benchmark. This is not annualized, so if you multiply that back of the envelope by 4 quarters, it was close to an 8% return. And that was, again, indicative of the significant decline in interest rates for the fourth quarter as growth has continued to moderate. Since inception, which is just March of 2023, the portfolio has returned about 3.2%, and that includes market value, compared to the benchmark, the 0 to 3 year U.S. Treasury Index of about 3.1%. I'm going to pause here and answer any questions you might have. Included in your more extensive report is a list of all of the holdings in the portfolio. Again, a mixture of sectors, very diversified and very high quality, from AA to AAA securities.
Thank you. Councilors, any questions?
No, I have none.
It's looking good. I think we're okay, Lauren. No questions here.
Well, thank you as always for the opportunity to see you each quarter. I appreciate it.
Tony, okay. Thank you very much. It's looking good. Okay, moving on. Communications, we don't have any. Next is business from the public. This allows the public to introduce items for council consideration that's not already scheduled on the agenda. Comment time will be limited to 3 minutes. If anyone from the public would like to speak to the council on any item that's not on the agenda, please come forward, give us your name and address. And we do have Nancy Talbert from Levy, another one of our partners.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Lundgren and City Council members and city staff. It's good to see everyone, and I do appreciate all the support the city does lend to Levy Inc. But this evening I'm here my name is Nancy Talbot. I'm with Levy Inc. This is my esteemed colleague, Melissa Tangadal, and she just recently joined the board of directors at Levy Inc. And we both serve on the board, and we're here it's our pleasure to talk about the phenomenal support we have from Republic Services. We both are on the board of directors, and we also volunteer in a lot of different capacities with Levy Inc., and one of them being fundraising. And fundraising is where much of the organization's yearly revenue comes from. So I popped into Republic Services office like I do in many of the businesses, and Josh was generously accepted a meeting with me, and that was about a year ago. And I know how busy businessmen are and businesswomen to take meetings with people asking for funding and support for their nonprofit organizations. Well, by the end of the meeting, he was really listened, and he was really intrigued and totally bought into what Levy Inc. is all about. And the result of that meeting, he ended up supporting our fundraiser golf tournament that not only sponsoring a whole, but also putting a team together consisting of 4 of his employees, which is a huge blessing to be able to do that, and the employees being able to enjoy a day off of work to play golf for charity, and they were just elated to be there. On top of that, we had Travis come out, and he was in the picture there at the golf tournament, and meeting with the golfers as they entered into that area that he had the whole sponsorship on. And
was it a good team? Did they win?
They did. I don't know. You know what? It's actually a scramble best ball. And we actually give prizes. They didn't win, no. but they didn't lose.
I've seen some of them play golf, so I understand.
But anyway, we had the Woodburn Independent out there, and they happened to interview the Republic Services employees, and they're just saying, "Wow, what a great day to, we get paid to be out here playing golf." So. Anyway, thank you so much. But the generosity of Josh didn't end there. He also told me a lot about how we could maybe access their donation portal and go into their system and ask for funding for projects and other fundraisers. And he set up a meeting between myself and our executive director, Rosetta Mongren, and Cindy Rogers and Travis Comfort, and they worked with us. And at my age, I have a lot of technical challenges, so they had to do a lot of hand-holding on trying to get us set up with that portal. And we were successfully able to get a grant submitted for our gala, and they did support the maximum amount of any sponsorship. And also, again, not only did they sponsor financially, but they participate. They bought a table and sent people to attend the function. And your staff had a lot of fun at that one too, and they did bid on prizes and raised their paddles and raised money for us. In between the 2 fundraisers, Josh also called one day and he goes, "Hey, do you have a use for disinfectant wipes?" Because they had several cases that had been from the pandemic, and we were able to take those and get them to families. We do supply household goods to families such as that, and we were happy to have that. I just want to acknowledge, as a population continues to increase in Woodburn, the numbers that we are serving continue to also increase, and we expect that to continue. In 2022, we had a 43% growth rate in the number of people served. And I think part of that was because we had moved, and also the pandemic, people didn't realize between where are you now and everybody's isolated at home. And now that all of that's passed, we've had a tremendous growth, and we just had another 10% growth this last year. So it's imperative that we are able to have the support of the community and the businesses to continue to help the most vulnerable citizens in our community. Do you have any questions?
Any questions about Love Inc.? Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing. I personally agree with you. I know how helpful Republic is, but also how important you guys are to our community too. So, thank you very much. Next, I have a Tom Feith.
Yes, I was looking to address the public hearing.
Please come up and.
He wants to speak during the public hearing.
Oh, this is for the public hearing that's
Yes.
we're gonna have in. Okay, I'm sorry. Got it. Then moving on. Anyone else from the audience? No. Then we have a consent agenda. Item listed on the consent agenda are considered routine and may be adopted by one motion. Any item may be removed for discussion at the request of a council member. And I'd like our city recorder, please, to read off what's on the consent agenda.
The items on the consent agenda are as follows. Woodburn City Council minutes of January 22nd, 2024. Acceptance of easements at 1123 North 3rd Street. City Attorney Employment Agreement and building activity for January 2024.
Any questions? Then I would recommend, I would like a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, signify with an aye.
Aye.
Opposed with the same. Motion passes. We do not have any table business. Next, we do have a public hearing, legislative amendment 2103, amendment to the Woodburn Development Ordinance relating to preservation and removal of trees. So I will open the public hearing and start with our staff report. Oh, declarations. Does anyone have any issues with trees? Does anyone know about any trees in Woodburn? Personally.
I have trees at my house.
I may have one of the biggest ones in the city.
Okay. Any personal problems with any trees you have at your house?
I've had personal problems with trees in my house, specifically during the big ice storm of 21. Yeah, we had like an $8,000 oak tree we had to take down. So.
Anything that might interfere with your listening and voting on a tree ordinance for the city of Woodburn tonight?
I sure hope not.
Then we'll bring it up later if there is.
Very good.
Anyone else? Okay, moving on. Anyone challenge anyone up here that might have a problem with a tree? No? Now we'll go to the staff report.
The other one in the middle of the screen. That's all right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Chris Kerr, Community Development Director. I'll go through the public hearing for us this evening. There we go. And just to kind of kick it off, first a thanks, first of all, to the Planning Commission for this particular legislative item. They spent a lot of time on it. I think they had 7 meetings, 6 separate work sessions, just kind of sit down, round table, hash it out, go through a lot of different scenarios, thinking about what might work, kind of robust conversations. Really good to have. You know, it's nice that it's really one of the big part of their job is to go through and make those kind of difficult decisions, discuss things kind of freely. And in the end, they wound up with a unanimous recommendation for the proposal that's in front of you this evening. And of course, I also want to give a quick thanks to Colin Cortez, Senior Planner. He's here. He's moving the slides, but he's involved in he was involved in this project intimately and knows the details probably even better than I do. And of course, Mackenzie Granum was involved in all these while she was just a lowly assistant city attorney working
There's a
through
lot of
this
pages
project.
you gave us. I think a lot of people were involved in this WDO.
So just kind of bringing you up to speed, and there's two items here that we're going to be talking about. The first one is just a typical code amendment. Every time we modify the WDO or zoning code, we have to have a public hearing. At the end, we're going to make staff will be recommending that you make a motion requesting us to come back with a final ordinance for you to sign that would formally modify. But in this case, we have something a little bit different. We also have a specific request for you to, at the same time, request staff to come back via a motion to modify the city's master fee schedule. And it's because these are related. Something that the Planning Commission thought was important was, as part and parcel with these code amendments, they wanted to make sure that we were also modifying the city's master fee schedule as it relates to as it relates to removal of significant trees. I'll talk about some of the details here in a second.
Okay.
So again, the objective here is pretty simple. We're looking to modify the tree preservation requirements, and I tried to cover some of the objectives, which are we really need to get a lot more clarity in our rules and more predictability in our existing codes for all parties. When I say all parties, I mean applicants who walk in the door and want to cut down a tree, whether it's a homeowner or it's a developer, and we need some clarity and predictability for staff as they do these reviews. It's important for the public to understand these rules too. This will help us be more consistent with our enforcement. And we have now proposed some different standards for different development types. Essentially, as development gets for larger properties and for more complex, expensive developments, the standards are a little more rigorous than they are for, say, a mom and pop on an individual single-family home. We didn't have that delineation before. That was something the Planning Commission thought was important. We also codify a lot of best management practices. Staff typically just applied these when they came into applications, when they came in the door, but that's not on very good legal ground. So now we're codifying these. I'll talk about what some of those are. And we're really trying to come up with, as I mentioned, a more intentional fee structure. Again, the goal is pretty simple. You want to discourage or dissuade people from cutting down trees. It's a bit of a carrot and a stick, right? You want to make it as painful as you can if it's absolutely necessary for them to cut down a tree, so that they do everything they can to preserve those trees and make every effort that they can to do so. So I think that the Planning Commission found a pretty good balance in there, and that's tied into the fee schedule modifications. As I said, the Planning Commission held 7 public hearings, and at the end of the day, unanimously approved the draft amendments and the fee schedule recommendations before you. And I gave you a sort of a rundown on these on January 8th as part of a work session that we had here. I walked through some of this, and we went out and provided not just the standard notices as we would for any code amendment. We did some additional notices out to the public, and I'll walk through what some of those are as well. I'll summarize the amendments. I'm going to stay high level. When I'm done, feel free to ask me any specific questions that you have about something in particular. Always keep in mind that when we're talking about our tree code regulations in our WDO, our zoning code, we're only talking about trees on private property. Trees out in the public right-of-way or in public parks we call them street trees. They fall under completely different regulations. They're not subject to the zoning code or these regs. As you went through the package, as you saw, we have new definitions addressing a lot of issues that have come up where, again, this is where we really needed some clarity about exactly how to measure significant trees, whether it's split trunks, what is hat racking, what does it mean to kill a tree, identifying things like root protection zones, which gets to what kind of tree preservation methods we have during construction. It's really an important concept. And our code was really lacking this before. We strengthened the intent and purpose statements in here. The Planning Commission actually spent a lot of time on this. They thought it was really important that at the very beginning of the section on significant trees to identify what is the purpose of these. Is it just to allow trees to get cut down? And what's the value of trees in the community? There's neighborhood issues. There's the importance of sustainability items and these kind of areas. And these are important because I think it sort of sends the message and guides where those regulations come from for the public and people to understand them. They thought that was really important. They actually spent a lot of time on that. We have more uniform arborist report requirements. These are pretty standard. I call them BMPs, best management practices. We also get into some trees which are exempt. Our codes, again, was silent about how to address, say, a commercial orchards, trees that are in future right-of-ways, invasive species. Those are all now outlined and clarified in the code. I talked a little bit about some best management practices we've adopted about what should be on a tree plan submittal. So when an application comes in the door, instead of staff essentially winging it as we have been saying, well, these are the things we'd like to see on your plan, identify these trees on this kind of survey with this topo, measured at this height with these standards, et cetera. Now we have actual standards and requirements that we have in the code. And again, these are pretty standard, coming right from the typical other jurisdictions that utilize these. So these aren't coming out of left field. They won't be a surprise to professional applicants that walk in the door. And we have provisions for exemptions for natural disasters, which is pretty timely. This was, I think of what happened with the Portland case that we just had kind of recently, where they really got inundated and hammered a little bit north of us in the last ice storm. So we actually have now some exemptions in here that say, essentially, if there's been a natural disaster and you come in, you don't have to pay a permit for your application. You don't have to pay to cut your tree down. They're automatically exempt through those provisions. Go ahead. One more quick slide on these is, again, we actually get a little bit to discouraging tree cutting during the annexation process. A lot of the annexation applications that we have in the city are tied to other applications, like a subdivision or a design review or a planned unit development that comes in. And while those properties technically aren't in the city yet, because they're still subject to the annexation, we now outline what those requirements are, and it lets us give them notice and put them on note that those trees are expected to stay as they work through that process. We have this is interesting. And you probably noticed this, there's a new classification that the Planning Commission liked. And the idea is, right now, a significant tree in the city is any tree that's more than 24 inches in diameter, 5 feet in height, I think it is, from the ground. Don't quote me. So the Planning Commission thought it was actually important that we look at a separate subset of trees, which are even larger, right? So these separate trees that are even larger, above 36 inches, I'm gonna keep looking back at Colin for confirmation for his younger brain than mine. So if a tree's greater than 36 inches in diameter, it gets a little bit separate preservation requirements. You have to preserve a greater percentage of them on certain development. For these larger trees that we consider more significant, they're titled with a T for tremendous. And they actually have a higher fee if that tree is going to be removed. In other words, a removal fee gets applied. Again, a little bit of a carrot and stick to try to keep people from removing these trees. It started with about 5 different tiers, and they whittled it down to 2, which we thought was a little bit better. Some more details. That we established some new removal criteria for significant trees that would be applicable to all trees that have to come down if it's not associated with the development, dealing with dead, diseased, otherwise dying, and a little bit more detail about what it means if they're posing a danger or a hazard to buildings, to people, to vehicles that are in an existing legal driveway, rupturing pipes, sewer lines, breaches of foundations. These are issues we get a lot of. We probably get a dozen or so significant tree permit applications over the counter. I can tell you probably half of them, if not more, come in with, the roots are breaking into the foundation, they've broken water pipes, et cetera. And this has a lot more detail. It allows it to come down, but it also has some more provisions as to what they need to do and what they need to show to get there, including coming in with an engineering report if required by staff. I'm sorry, an engineering, structural engineer if necessary by staff, as well as the arborist reports, which are still optionally required if they're necessary by the city for smaller cases and required of larger developments. And of course, the rules are, under the new guidelines, are going to be tailored for what I call this context of development. Again, this idea that for more significant development, you have to preserve more trees and you have different standards. Go ahead, Colin. I thought I'd quickly walk you through it. There's only one more slide after this, I promise. So think of it this way. As the Planning Commission was looking at it, there's really a big difference between saving trees and what it means to take down a tree on an existing development, say a single-family home, which are the two rows you see in blue on the top, as opposed to a cleared-out site where a new development's coming in, a new subdivision, and there's trees on the property, and they have the opportunity to design around them. There's often still a need to take down some significant trees, but it's very different. So essentially what this does is it outlines this different level of review. These larger developments have increased protection. For example, for say a single family home, you have to come in and submit this arborist report. These people come in the door because almost always they need to take down a significant tree because they have some kind of justification. Because it's dying, it's hazardous to something on their property. And those criteria are really very different from, say, think of the Dove Landing subdivision or the Marion Point subdivision on the north side of town, where you have 30, 40 acres of land and you're carving up a subdivision into it. But we've already identified 30 significant trees that are already large enough to be deemed significant. So for these bottom tier, these sites where someone's coming in to develop these usually vacant sites or almost nearly vacant sites, there's a set requirement that they must preserve 1/3 of those significant trees, and they have to mitigate, in other words, replant or pay a mitigation fee for the 2/3 that they remove for smaller subdivisions. Think of a 2 or 3 lot partition, and they're putting it on a property. For a larger subdivision, these large subdivisions I was just talking about, they actually have to preserve half of the significant trees on that property, and the other half would be mitigated if they're going to be removed. What it really does is it makes them think early on about which trees they need to preserve and how they're going to design their site. There's always a lot of issues about utilities, roads that are going through properties, storm detention facilities are going to take up different parts of the site. And I think there's an understanding that some significant trees are often going to have to come out. But there's a requirement here that they have to save a certain percentage, and they need to think long and hard about it. And then if they do remove them, they have to be mitigated. Right now, our code's silent on those for those new developments. I think it was just an oversight. Go ahead. Talking about this new draft fees that I have before you this evening, that the Planning Commission was thinking about. I want to walk you through it just for a second. You don't have to focus that much on the individual numbers. Understand that we now have these classifications, these tiers, these T1 through T4, right? And the red ones are the ones I was talking about sort of for these larger subdivisions. It might just be a 4-lot subdivision, and it might be these very large ones, which would be a T4, where you're working on, say, a multi-family development or a design review on a larger piece of property where there's a lot of trees that you're dealing with. It says that for S at the top column there under significant tree class, which is this 24 to 36 inch tree, these are the requirements if you want to remove it, or if you don't want to plant a mitigation tree, that's a fee that you would pay to the city. And of course it goes up, as you see, pretty significantly as we get down to the bottom part for removing, say, these largest of trees on a big site. We decided to move into a per inch number. It's $150 per inch. Again, part of the idea here is there are some trees that there's a real difference between a 24-inch tree and, say, a 72-inch tree. And I think the reason we have this tiered, scaled approach is so that the number for removing a tree at $150 per inch is going to be pretty significant. So an applicant should look very, very long and hard about trying to save that tree. There's still some flexibility in here in that they can still remove 50% of those significant trees on the site. But the idea here is if it costs more money, they're more inclined to save the largest of the trees. That's the thinking that the Planning Commission.
How did you come up with these prices?
So some of these are, I'm trying to think of the mitigation fees right now is, what is it right now, Colin? $250, I think?
Right now in the master fee schedule is a flat $250 per tree.
So right now it's a $250 tree, and again, I think what the Planning Commission was coming back to was trying to make it a bit easier for the simple mom and pop who are doing one tree on one, where frankly the costs are pretty prohibitive for them already, as opposed to these other trees. And they go up pretty high and pretty significantly. I think one of the things that they kind of walk back on is if you think back in time a few years ago when the city experienced the ice storm, one of the things that came out right after that was this problem we were having where people were taking down trees after they were told not to do so. I don't know if you remember this. We saw some trees disappear, significant trees in town. And the city passed, in addition to that ice storm, a separate emergency ordinance, or I'm sorry, a separate ordinance, not an emergency ordinance, pardon me, that increased the fees from between $5,000 and $10,000 for somebody who was essentially told you can't cut down that tree and then did so. Right? In other words, willfully cut down the tree after they were told not to do it. We've had a couple of those instances happen. Those fees went between $5,000 and $10,000. I think based on that, the Planning Commission heard that, and they worked these fees out to, you see on the lower right-hand side, getting up to this cap of $12,600. That was the number they were thinking of working back into. You know, they heard some testimony and talked to people about sort of what it costs for an individual homeowner to cut down a tree. And I think that was a bit of a surprise. I think it's easy to forget that when someone needs to take down a tree that's close to their home, it can get very, very expensive. It can be thousands and thousands of dollars just to cut it down. And I think it seemed a bit over the top. At least I think the Planning Commission had the feeling that it may have been over the top to charge them another $400 and $600 on top of that to cut down that tree. So again, it's this sort of scale of, for these mom and pops and individual homes are quite different than developments where they have more opportunities to preserve trees. Good.
Is there anything about removing the stump in here?
There isn't anything about removing stumps.
So we cut down a tree.
Well, so what we
pay for $6,000 to cut a tree down, and you got a stump that's just as big.
It's going to be very expensive to get rid of. Yeah. Yes, it is.
You gotta grind it down. That's how they do it.
It is. It's interesting to. I think it was interesting for the Planning Commission to sort of hear testimony from people about how much it costs to take out a tree, including the stump. And when it's close to your house, it can be a lot more expensive. Sure. You have to be creative about the way they get cut down. So again, that's the summary of the fees. Again, I want to point out quickly for trees that are come down by bad weather, by storms, there's no charge for them, no charge for the application fee, there's no removal fee. I would expect them, and I would like to keep it in there, that they have to come in and at least complete an application with us. I think it's important to track that. So if that tree's gone in a few years, we'll know that it's disappeared. It seems pretty minimal that they do it, and something we can reach out to people on, but they shouldn't have to pay an extra fee or an extra penalty for that having happened to them. And again, this is a bit unusual for a legislative item, but assuming you're okay with that, staff can put that in the master fee schedule, that particular provision that I just spoke about. Go ahead, Colin. So notice and testimony at the work session, a couple of members of the council asked that we go out and make sure we reach out and get as much input as we could and reach out to let the community and the public know what was going on with these particular changes. So we did that. So we reached out to not just the Planning Commission participants. We had a few people come and speak at the Planning Commission, a couple of their 7 meetings. We also reached out for everyone who's received a tree removal permit in the city for the past 2.5 years. We sent the notice out to them so they were aware of it. Those are the people. And frankly, I talked to some of them initially beforehand to get their feedback as we started crafting these. We sent that out to developers. We sent that out to the, Colin, what's the Arbor give me the name of this
The
group.
International Society of Arboriculture.
Okay. The tree group, the tree team who does these things, as well as the HBA and home builders, to see what kind of feedback we could get from them. I only got a couple of phone calls. I didn't get a lot of feedback in the last couple of weeks. Generally supportive of the change, and as you can imagine, with a lot of the recent activity that's happened in Portland, I got one question and one email, just generally asking about what would happen after a storm. It was I read this in the newspaper. Do we have that provision here? And I didn't get any additional written testimony that I could provide to you.
Okay.
And that was it. Again, if you're okay moving forward with this, we're looking for 2 separate motions. The first one's the typical one for a motion to move forward with an ordinance back to you at the next meeting, and we want a separate one, if you were comfortable with it, directing us to modify that master fee schedule, because they're they're really tied together, and I think it's important.
Got it.
I think that was it.
Okay, we move on. leave this up, will you?
Yeah.
Moving on to testimony by proponents. Anyone who's in favor of this from the audience? Anyone that is against testimony by opponents? Not hearing any, then I will close the public hearing.
I think someone's here.
Oh, this is the one you want to talk about? Come on up. Please give me your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Tom Feudal. I'm a consulting arborist with Tarragon and Associates. We're based out of Lake Oswego. I'm up in Oregon City, and so I wasn't really privy to the development of this ordinance until recently. And I think it's fantastic that the city's decided this is an important thing to address. One thing I'd like to bring to light is regarding the mitigation requirements. And it's critical, as we talk about tree preservation during development as the city grows, that we need, to keep our canopy coverage, increase our canopy coverage in certain senses. But aside just from the sheer number of trees, we need to address the type of trees that are being removed and the type of trees that are required to replace those trees that are removed. In terms of just the size of the trees. So when a large form tree, say an Oregon white oak, is replaced, a lot of times, it's the suggested mitigation is, maybe a small maple or a small dogwood tree, that they're hitting their 1-for-1 mitigation requirement, but they're not effectively maintaining the canopy of the city and the objectives of why the tree code is important that were listed at the beginning. Those are only effectively addressed if the large form trees are being replaced with large form trees. And so you guys, I think, referenced the City of Portland plant list for the nuisance trees. So the City of Portland plant list also classifies trees by crown size. And so requiring trees of a certain crown size, based off the species profile, to be replaced with similarly sized trees, I think will be critical as the city develops these policies moving forward.
Okay.
That's it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming. Okay, I will close the public hearing and open it up for discussion. Council, do we have any?
Why are you looking at me for?
Because you happen to be looking down the line.
Okay.
I would be interested in hearing from staff as to our last speaker in talking about similarity of species in terms of replacement, how we address that or don't address that.
I can take a bit of a stab at it. So I don't actually replant the trees, and my department doesn't do that. So the issue would be if someone were replacing it, would we do one of two things? When someone's replacing a tree, would we have a list and a requirement for them to replace, as he said, sort of a crown for crown with, whatever species, some like species. The others are, a lot of the trees we plant ourselves, right? We collect a mitigation fund and we replant a lot of trees and put a lot of trees in on our own. I don't think that's something that would be found in our zoning code. It's more on the operation side of it. And it seems like an excellent suggestion. I can't imagine why we wouldn't want to do that. And I think it's something that we could. I can't imagine why it wouldn't be a good idea to replace that like for like the same way. So you keep essentially that tree canopy over time.
But to counterpoint that, if I have a large maple tree, like I do at my house, and I say, hey, I'm going to take that big maple tree out because it's either crushing the foundation or going to collapse onto my house, and I say, I'm going to plant another one just like it to mitigate that. I mean, it's not my problem because I'll be dead by the time it's big enough to be an impact again. But isn't that kind of dumb?
Well, I think the option is, because you don't have to replant another tree on your property. You can pay the money and then the city could replant that same species in the right place. This is often about putting the right tree in the right place. So if the city wanted to replant it, we're still getting the same gains of that tree canopy citywide, but in a better location.
So I can understand that for new development. I think my biggest concern with this I like the idea of, I'm a big regulations guy, I like regulations because you can go and look at them. I think it's literally an unfunded mandate to tell people who live here right now, this is your place, you've bought it, and maybe people were lucky enough to get a house that has trees on it and everything, but the cost, and I think you brought it up, Chris, is that it was $8,000 after the ice storm to take out, we had a maple tree, and it was, gosh, it's 5 feet across, but it was close to the house. I mean, it was 10 feet from our house, and it was collapsing on the house during the ice storm. And I never imagined how much it would cost. I mean, we maintained our trees like we're supposed to and stuff, but during a disaster like that, you don't understand the impact. Had I known that ahead of time, I would have taken that tree out before there was an ice storm. And I think, like with Portland, you see people's houses with what I think is reprod type of trees that should be harvested for lumber, collapsed across their houses because they built these houses in these big fir dense type of tree forms. So I think it's very tough for us to go out and tell homeowners that are living here now to say, hey, if you want to take steps to protect your property, you're going to have to pay a fee, you're going to have to justify it, you're going to have to hire an engineer to say, hey, it's crushing your foundation or whatever. That just seems like it's over the top. I mean, maybe for some people, and myself, I could probably make that happen, it'd be a lift, but not everybody can do that. And I think if we're gonna do that, we need to set up something to say, hey, the city believes in that, and we're willing to fund that to a certain extent. You know, I mean, we give out thousands of dollars for urban renewal and for lots of different programs that are very good programs. And if we think it's that important for this program within Woodburn, I think we need to put some money into it to say, hey, it's important. And I totally understand Chris and his department with all this massive amount of development that's coming in. That's a whole different business body of work, I guess is how I see it, versus the people who are here now that are, all the people in my ward and all over the place in Woodburn, they're just different consumers of this ordinance.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Okay. Anything else? Council?
I was just, I just wanted to say, I'm really proud of the Planning Commission for all the meetings, but I, for one, witnessed a tree that was removed from a property when they were told that they couldn't remove it, and they did it anyway. And so that kind of set me up to make sure that there were some changes. So anyway, I'm glad to see the changes, and I wish that the individual that that removed the tree, I think there was a fine, but I'd still like to see a tree there.
Which brings to mind, how do we police that? What, somebody removes a certain tree on a weekend, digs out the stump, it's gone.
Get that grinder.
How do we know that it was a 13-foot diameter tree? They come back on Monday morning, a neighbor calls and complains and says, my neighbor did this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we get that a lot, right?
Sure.
I get a lot of that tree's disappearing or it disappeared. And we've been out there, as you know, with, measuring stumps and saying, here's how high it was. And in fact, in the case that Councilor Schaub's talking about, that's what we had to do. I had to look at old photographs and justify it by measuring the stump on the ground and say, well, based on that estimate, it was safe to assume that it was this. It was larger than 24 inches in that case. It's not easy, right? We kind of rely on the public to come in and report these things.
Yeah.
So in other words, there's nothing preventing people from doing that?
Well, there's a massive fine now if you do it. Before there wasn't. Yeah.
Well, I had a tree, before I was on council, I had a tree in my backyard that was tremendous, and it kind of just split, okay? And I didn't contact the city, I didn't do anything, I just needed it, off my fence, and I cut it off probably 12 or 13 feet up because I just like stumps, and it grew back. But my point being, it was a catalpa. It's probably one of those invasive trees. But my point being is, how was I supposed to know that I was supposed to go to the city first that's what people are gonna say.
Yeah.
How did I know that I was supposed to get permission? It's in my yard, it's in my backyard. I didn't know I needed to come to this city. So I guess we need to let arborists know that work within the city, which most of them probably already do, that there are ordinances that the homeowner needs to check into before the arborist can come and start cutting down, right?
Absolutely. So a couple of things. First, we already have an ordinance in the books that says if you have a tree that's more than 24 inches on your private property, you need a permit to cut it down.
But how are they supposed to know that? we
Right.
have
How have they known that for the past 30 years? Right.
Yeah,
The
but-
answer is we need to do a good job of informing them. A couple of things. First of all, with this new provision, I think it's nice that we've not only notified tree cutting services and the Home Builders Association and neighborhood associations, from Tukwila to the estates to whatever these other
Yeah.
lists, to let them know that this was out there and coming so that they could see it is nice. Once this is adopted, we can post it on our site, we can put it out in the e-blast and get the kind of notifications now, which is 100 times better than it currently is, which is, I understand a lot of people didn't know it. And it happens that people are going to say, I didn't know that was your provision. But now that these are going in place, I think we can obviously do a much better job of putting it out there and getting notice of it. It's been in place for a long time. And as a slight aside, the vast majority, I've been working in development a long time, it's pretty rare that there's a big difference between an arborist and a tree cutting service. Tree cutting services are usually pretty savvy about whether or not they need to get a permit in town.
Right.
Not every single city needs a permit, it's true. But a tree cutting service worth its salt will spend 2 minutes calling us and asking. We get asked all the time, is it okay if I cut down this tree? And you tend to see the same services here a lot. So the good news is, and we actually have a pretty good rapport, it's pretty rare that someone that we work with all the time will illegally cut down a tree. They know what to do. I mean, we've got speed dial of the 8 companies that do this all the time because they're out there all the time. And they're usually very good about it. They know what the rules are and they don't want to violate it. Are there going to be scofflaws?
But Uncle Joe and Robert might come over for Friday
On Sunday,
night.
yeah, that's when the chainsaws bust out.
They're chainsaws. I hear chainsaws are a lot of
That's-
fun.
Chainsaws on Sunday are always the issue. Yeah, you're right. I can't
So
disagree.
We don't have an arborist on staff.
We do not. No, we contract out with an arborist that we work with a lot. They've been actually wonderful for us to work with on not only park projects that we work with, but we work with them all the time downtown, making recommendations, looking at different trees, and we've gone out and asked for their advice before.
Okay, moving on. Any other discussion, comments?
I just want to say that I agree with Councilor Morris. I feel like it's good that we have these ordinances in place, but I think that people that have, like, let's say someone buys a house and it's big tree that's giving them problems, they should be able to cut down a tree and not have to get a fine for it. But definitely go through the procedures of like getting a permit and all that stuff, but it shouldn't cost an arm and a leg plus whatever the service fee is to get it cut down. So I agree.
I agree, I mean, private property.
Yeah, private property.
Can I raise one thing? And it's just to bring it to your attention. It's not lost on the Planning Commission. And I probably went over this too quickly. I mean, I'll point this out. So for these, we call these tier ones, right?
Yeah,
These are
that's the 150,
single family
right?
homes, right? They're currently under our fee schedule, there's a removal permit application of $220. That's the fee that'll be in there. Is that correct, Tom? And
Chris, just real quick.
go ahead.
What's that $225 for?
Well, that's for staff to process their application, for them to come in and process it. And then if they remove that tree, there's no additional fee.
But staff isn't doing an arborist report because you got to get an arborist report, right? So, you see where I'm going with that? I boxed you in on it, I'm sorry.
Well, no, that's all right.
Hypothetically, it's not you making that decision, I understand that, but.
I'm happy to say that we spend far more than $280 of staff time. We don't get that many. These usually require us going out to take a look at the site and to look at the tree, which
Okay.
means driving out and seeing it. And then we do have criteria and application requirements that we have. We usually meet with people, we walk them through. It usually starts with, hey, I'd like to do this, how do I work through it? And we walk them through and hold their hand. Again, these are the one-off single-family homes. that we try to get them right.
I'm totally, that's the only way I know how to think about it. But if staff is coming out to look at my tree, and you're gonna the ordinance is gonna, I'm not gonna blame you anymore, the ordinance is gonna require us to have an arborist report. That's gonna cost me money too, because, well, actually, my tree guy is an arborist too, so it's kind of a double bonus.
That's good.
but-
So, and again, I probably went over this tier 1 too fast. Let me touch on a couple pieces. It now removes the requirement that every tree cutting, every removal of a significant tree on, say, a single-family home
Yeah.
would require an arborist report. Currently, under our code, it does require that.
Okay.
This is being changed, and again, this was really the idea that we want to make it a little bit softer touch for these other, for some folks instead of others. And in addition, there's no longer going to be any removal fee. So there's no fee to cut it down. There's no arborist report required for if your tree splits and I lucked out and it's fallen over on the side. You don't need to call an arborist. You do right now under the code. And that's an additional fee of, say, $1,000 or $1,500 someone has to go through.
And I apologize, I didn't read the 150.
No, it's on me. I should have touched on some of that.
Like 150-page track changes that we gave. I'm like, I'm not reading that. I'm just not. So.
I'm sorry. So, and as it goes up, just to point it out, there is a very significant removal fee for the larger new developments. For example, it's $600 for a significant tree for each tree removed for, say, a subdivision that's coming in and wants to take out 6 trees. If an individual homeowner wants to, they don't necessarily have to get an arborist. I can require one if it's close and it's questionable, but I don't have to, right? If it's obvious and looks like a duck, we can do that. And we can do it cheaply and move them through that process fast. But the others and the professionals in the larger subdivisions will still have to.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, let's move on.
It's
We got another
complicated. I
public
appreciate
hearing
your
to go
patience.
I would entertain a couple motions.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to tentatively approve legislative amendment LA 21-03 related to tree preservation and removal, directing staff to prepare an ordinance for consideration at the next city council meeting.
Thank you.
And I offer a second motion.
Let's just do one at a time. Is there a second to the first motion?
Second.
Any discussion on that? All in favor signify, do we need a roll call vote on that? No. All in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion directing staff to prepare an ordinance amending ordinance number 2433, which is the city master fee schedule regarding tree removal and mitigation for consideration at the next city council meeting.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to another public hearing we have regarding the adoption of Parks and Recreation Master Plan, associated comprehensive plan goal and policy amendments. We get- So, I will open the public hearing.
Waiting for staff.
Do we have any potential conflicts of interest with our parks?
I go to parks.
Go to parks, we know what all parks are.
There's a park in my ward.
Any challenges? None of us live in the parks at the moment? Okay. Moving on, then I will turn it over to Jesse.
Perfect. Mayor, City Council, Jesse Cuomo, Community Services Director. Tonight before you, we are bringing the Park Master Plan update, and this will, Dan will go through some details from the legislative side of it as well. The last time the Park Master Plan was updated was 2009, so it's definitely due. We usually do these plans every 10 to 12 years. We started ours about a year and a half ago, and Steve Dew from Conservation Techniques has been a great partner throughout this whole process. And so the real, I just want to kind of nail down before we get to Dan's comments and Steve's going through a presentation is the importance of this plan. plan, the plan helps really guide our parks for the next 10 to 12 years, ideally. It also, in this plan that hopefully you had a chance to review, provides kind of a guiding light for park development and where that goes. And that also helps guide our SDC methodology. So where those SDC charges with all this fantastic development we've had goes into the Park SDC fund, and where we can use those funds, and in which proportions those things can be done. And so hopefully in this next budget cycle, next fiscal year, we'll also be looking at doing those improvements to updating our Park SDC methodology to match this, because then it's kind of a symbiotic relationship between the two documents. But with that, I'm going to hand it over to Dan to talk about kind of the legalese. Dan Handel, one of our planners in the planning department, and yeah, we're gonna talk about putting in trees, not taking out trees. So I just want to put that
Good
out
idea.
there.
Mr. Mayor, councilors, thank you. Like Jesse mentioned, last time the Parks and Rec Master Plan was updated was 2009, about 15 years ago. So it's about time we get that updated again. And because the Parks Plan is part of our overall comprehensive plan for the city, if we update the Parks Plan, it needs to go through the legislative amendment process for updating our comprehensive plan. So hence why it's a legislative amendment for you tonight. About 2-3 weeks ago, the Planning Commission held their public hearing. They had a good discussion about park funding, and ultimately issued a unanimous recommendation of approval for the plan you see before you tonight. So the council tonight's holding a public hearing, and staff is recommending a tentative approval, so we can come back at our next meeting with draft ordinances for review and adoption. Kind of the technical side of it, I do want to just give my own little quick pitch for it. The Parks and Rec Master Plan's a really instructive document for the planning department as we go through development project reviews. So Chris mentioned some of those subdivisions up on the north side of town, Dove Landing and Marion Point. The Parks Plan, current version right now that we're going to be updating, identified a need for parkland up in that part of the city. So when these subdivisions were going through the review, we were able to identify that as a need. We worked with the developer for both of those projects on connecting how their project can help fill some of those needs in the community. So this document here, it's certainly a big help for Jesse as he goes through obtaining funding sources for and maintenance for the parks, but it also helps our department as we connect the needs with various developments so they can help contribute, make those needs, help the city meet those needs, and just improve our park system overall. So, thank you.
It's quite a plan.
Yeah, it was amazingly well done. I hope as you went through it, for at least for me, for a comprehensive plan, it felt digestible, even though it's a dense document. It felt, it was really nice working with Steve and the way they put their plans together. I feel like, if you wanted some sleeping material, you could read this before you go to bed, but it's also something where the, average person can just read it and go, oh, this makes sense. It's not just a bunch of jargon where you get lost in the nuances of it. So I really appreciate the effort that Conservation Techniques puts in that. Really quick before I turn it over to Steve, I do want to give a lot of kudos to Chris and Colin and Dan and the whole planning department, because they not only, look at the plan and kind of push these things forward, but really do involve the Parks and Community Services Department in when the development comes, and the developers work with us really closely on trying to find the best amenities within maybe an SDC credit methodology, or whatever the case is, to provide a good amenity. And so that is really nice. It's a really good symbiotic relationship between us, and that's kind of how our city works, really. We don't have silos, and I really appreciate that. So thanks to Chris and his team, and Dan and Colin and everyone. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Dew for Conservation Techniques to go through a brief slideshow with you all, and then answer any questions following that.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Is this, it is on, okay. Next slide's
Again, good evening, Mayor, members of council. My name is Steve Duke, Conservation Techniques. Just a brief presentation to just highlight where we went and where we've been through the development of the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. I want to touch on the community engagement process as well as the key findings from that. A little bit about the plan structure, goals, key recommendations, and leave some time for discussion with council. So, as a reminder, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan is the city's 10-year guide and strategic plan for all things parks and recreation, open space, trails. It really is the guiding document for Jesse and his staff and for the community development staff to look at where the city is today, what impacts might be coming via future development, and what improvements might be needed to be made to the existing suite of parks, trails, and programs. And this is intended to guide those improvements over the next 10 years. Regarding the community engagement process, it was robust and varied. The intent really was to have an engagement process with the community where people felt they were informed, they were included, and they were engaged in the process. And that included a variety of tactics, including a community survey.
Go back. Sorry.
Outreach to the schools, outreach in multiple languages, open house sessions, hybrid and in person, as well as discussions with different stakeholder groups, coordination with the Recreation and Park Board, as well as Planning Commission and City Council. So in all, we've touched about 750 participants through this process. So we got a lot of great feedback. Most of that was via the community survey. And from that, next slide, key improvement priorities surfaced. Really, they broke down into 3 key themes. One is to improve and upgrade existing parks, expand trail opportunities, and add new amenities or new recreation opportunities as the city has grown quite a bit over the last 10+ years. So that comes through in the way in which recommendations and specific project ideas are put forward in the plan. Next. If you had a chance to go through it, you would have seen a series of maps, a lot of analysis, and a lot of insight into where the city is today. And one way we looked at the city is through the lens of gap analysis, which included looking at physical distribution of parks, where they are today, who has access to them. We use these travel shed maps that you see on screen, which basically map out areas where folks live within a half mile of a park and those who live outside of that zone. So just for reference, this map shows half-mile catchment areas for the different parks across the city. And you can see there's a few areas that are in white that are outside of that would become focus areas for future acquisitions, partnerships, coordination with developers, etc. So it's just one of many tools that we put into the plan to think through what those gaps look like. Gaps take other forms, though. That includes physical accessibility. So we looked at ADA access, and the accessibility of the different park sites as they exist today, whether there's reasonable access into playgrounds, reasonable access to the different amenities, park benches, tables, sport courts, etc. So that comes through in some of the site analysis that is part of the plan. And also with regard to gaps, we look at the system as a whole to see what is the current diversity of recreation opportunities, and what might be needed going forward to meet the needs of the community based on what we heard from the outreach. So are there enough sport fields? Are there enough sport courts? Where are additional trails required or needed? Those sorts of things. And that came through also in the types of program offerings and the partnerships that the city has for programs. So the analysis covered a lot of different tactics for looking at gaps and suggesting some potential recommendations going forward.
One point of clarity really quick on the travel shed map versus it just being as the crow flies, because if you look at maybe down by B, you look at Centennial Park and you're like, well, why is there only a half mile would be a half mile directly from that green square, right? No, it is actually from the entry point of the park is what they go off of. So it's actually a walking travel shed piece. It's not as the crow flies, just as a point of clarity.
Thanks, Jesse. And actually, to clarify that a little further, it's not just from a point of entry, but it's a point of entry along a road network. So from a legitimate point of entry to a park, not the park boundary, you travel along the road system to get to those distances, the half mile, et cetera. So if you are near a park, but you don't have an existing road system that gets you there, it creates a gap on the map, just for clarity. The analysis of the system also took a couple of different forms in terms of looking at different metrics. So we looked at public satisfaction, which came through the survey results. We looked at the current site conditions, which came through our landscape architect visiting all of the properties and assessing current condition, care, and quality. Through the travel shed mapping that you just saw, as well as a tracking of usage or visitation. So again, that came through the survey where we asked how often people go, weekly, monthly, yearly, et cetera. The intent here is, one, to do a snapshot in time, to say, here's where the city is today, but ultimately it'll become a good benchmarking tool the next time the city is doing an update, or in 5 years, or the next time the city does a survey. Then you can kind of start to trend this information over time. Next. So the plan document is structured very similar to any other comprehensive plan style document. So the first few chapters are really context, a little about process, a little about inventory, just to kind of lay that foundation of what went into this document and kind of what the current situation is. The middle section of the plan is really the needs assessment, and that's broken out topically. So there are chapters specific to parks and open space, trails, recreation, aquatics, and events, and actually operations as well. And within each of those, there's reference to statewide, regional, and national trends, what we heard from the public, recommendations and suggestions for improvements, enhancements across each of those topic areas. And then the last bulk of the plan really is about goals and recommendations. So a chapter specific to goals and actions. Again, those are broken out topically. I'll touch on that in a moment. And then the actual project list and implementation ideas. So the project list is a 10-year park improvement plan, which will be a guide for future budgeting. And then within that implementation chapter is also some suggestions about strategies to implement the plan, whether it's different finance options or partnership options, et cetera. And after that's really a bunch of appendices. So granted, it is a bulky document, but only about half of it's really the core part that you have to read. Regarding the goals and actions, I just want to walk you through these really briefly. Since this plan will relate to the comprehensive plan, I just wanted to stress some of these action items. Many of these goals came through from the 2009 plan and the current comprehensive plan, updated and refreshed with the review of the board, the Recreation and Park Board. So one goal is regarding community engagement, and really the intent here is to have some language in the plan that is to encourage and support public involvement. And that can take the form of getting people involved in a future update to a plan like this, getting people engaged in specific park improvement projects, or just keeping them engaged and involved through the board and through communications. A second goal regarding community inclusion is new to this plan, and it really is intended to put some language in the document that says everyone should have a voice, everyone should feel that the park and recreation system should be accessible and open to them, and it really just encourages inclusion and opportunities for play of all kinds. Maintenance and sustainability deals with what it sounds like. It's about the longevity of assets, the preservation of habitat and natural systems, and safety for the park system and for the patrons who are using the parks. Parks and open space goal is really geared around providing that diversity of park space for active and passive use, so some field space, some quiet space, some open space to just enjoy nature, but also relating to that inclusion goal of making sure that those parks and open spaces can accommodate different age groups, different uses, different abilities, and different interests. Trails and connectivity is to strengthen the notion of a connected network of recreational trails across Woodburn, building on your efforts along Mill Creek, and really just tying the city together through different trail opportunities. And within that, there's also language about coordinating with development community through the community development department. Recreation, arts, and events goal is about, again, a varied and inclusive suite of program offerings, relying on partners and building on the strength that you have in your aquatics program. And then the last one is administration and management, just making sure that you've got the staff leadership to move forward with all these projects, to build those relationships for partners, and build more collaborations and agreements going forward to bring some of these projects to fruition. So the new plan has a specific list of projects. I'll touch on some of the key recommended projects, and I broke them out topically here for you. Within the notion of trails, since we heard a lot from the community about desire for more trails, longer trails, connected trails, one key piece here is just to continue your effort in putting together the pieces of Mill Creek Greenway and moving forward with those linkages and pulling that spine together from which other segments can be tied to. Other recommendations within trails include finding additional connections that are mapped in the plan, doing trailhead upgrades, so there's space for parking and signage, kiosks, restrooms, things where people can actually go to start a walk. But then also looking at the long-term management of the existing trail system and doing some pavement improvement over time and just taking care of what you have. Within park development and enhancement, a number of different projects. I'm highlighting only a couple here on screen. One is for Settlemyre Park, which would be related to potentially the future community center. And improvements there would be things like upgrading the skate park, restroom upgrade, shelter replacement, sport courts. But also within the suite of park enhancements, looking for ways to put in a boundless playground for all ability play. Finding another site for splash pad, additional picnic areas, places where people can come together with their family and recreate in kind of low cost, no cost sort of way. But also building on the successes of securing some properties via the development agreements for improvements at Dove Landing, at Boone's Crossing, and getting those projects up and built. On the recreation side, the facility side, big project is the community center. That's noted in the plan, as well as some renovations to the aquatic center to bring that up to par relative to a new community center that would be right next to it. ADA and enhancements would be upgrades over time to make sure that there's accessible routes to benches, pathways, or benches, tables, sport courts, things like that across the park system, and eliminating barriers, whether that's ramps or providing ramps into playgrounds, or smoothing out pavement so you don't have big lips that are an impediment to people in wheelchairs or mobility devices, those sorts of things. Then lastly, a couple projects related to future acquisitions to fill some of those gaps that were noted in the maps, and accommodating additional wayfinding and signage, and just letting people know from a communication standpoint where things are, how to get to them, and how things are linked. So again, that park improvement plan is that 10-year project list. And the intent is that it's not a budget per se, but it is just a project list to help inform communications between staff and council when it comes to budgeting and project prioritization. So it'll help guide future decision making about where to invest and where the community sees those investments needing to be. So that they're listed out at a project by project basis. They're also costed, and they are phased in terms of likely sequencing. So again, it's a framework, but it's not necessarily something set in stone, and the city can certainly adjust that as resources and opportunity arise. And just a real quick pie chart to just illustrate the distribution of those costs in that 10-year project list across different types of projects. First point is they all add up to about 92 million from what we've identified. About 2/3 of that is the community center. So the remaining 30 million over a 10-year window is everything else that's not community center oriented. And you can see on the chart that it breaks out fairly evenly between trails, park development, and some acquisitions. So there's a good spread in the dollars and the intent across the different project types. So that really is just a quick synopsis of what's contained within the plan. I also just want to say it's been great working with Jesse and staff. It's been a team effort, and hopefully that the plan serves the city in the long term. With that, there's one more slide on next steps, and I'll just turn it back.
So, you know, we obviously took this to the Park Board, Planning Commission for review, then the public hearing with the Planning Commission, and then it's for you tonight. Following this meeting, we'll bring back an ordinance for adoption for you all, as long as the tentative legislation update is approved tonight.
Any questions for staff? Really? 200 pages that we just received? It's been a long night.
It's an impressive document.
It is very
Yes.
impressive. Good job.
Thank you.
Good job. There's a lot of information here. I got a couple questions. So. Anything in mind for an acquisition for parks here in the future? You got $6 million planned in the next 10 years. What do you see out there that we are missing?
I don't know if actively we have property aligned. You know, I think the city's position, whether it be official or not, we've been really successful in securing additional parkland via, you know, development kind of providing to the system, which is honestly the probably best way for us to acquire land. It's the most cost effective in that way. And so as development has come, we've been able to add to the system. And in addition to doing improvements to, you know, or having those new parks and then doing improvements within those with developers or adding to those projects moving forward, I think kind of seeing this plan as well as the community isn't dissatisfied with the number of acres of parks. They want to see more trails, but the actual park acreage, it seems like that wasn't as much of an issue as much as, hey, keep up what we have, improve where we have it, were the big kind of pieces that I took away from the plan. So
we have 130 acres roughly of parks?
Roughly, correct.
And I noticed you have Senecal Creek in there with 20 acres. Is that part of the 130?
That is included. That is very minimally maintained. Really, hey, there's a tree we need to get out of there kind of situation. So it's not really usable. There is some charts in the plan based on our parks per thousand, our acreage per thousand, and things like that of their community. And we are significantly below the national average when it comes to that. But doesn't mean, you know, I think it depends on access and things like that too. I think if you can provide adequate access to the parks you do have, I think that's very key as well.
Okay. Do we have any testimony from proponents out there? No. Do we have any testimony from opponents? Anyone against this master plan? Hearing none, I will close public hearing. Do not sense any other discussion needed by the council, then I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to tentatively approve legislative amendment LA 2304, adopting the Parks and Recreation Master Plan and updated Parks and Recreation goals and policies as part of a comprehensive plan amendment based upon the analysis and findings of the staff report, and direct staff to prepare an ordinance for consideration at the next city council meeting.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor signify with an aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good presentation. Very good report. Moving on, we have Council Bill 3240.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to introduce Council Bill number 3240.
Thank you. Council Bill 3240 has been duly introduced, and being an ordinance requires 2 readings. May we please have the first reading by title only if there's no objection.
Council Bill number 3240, an ordinance regulating the detection and elimination of illicit discharge in the city's stormwater system, providing for enforcement, repealing in part ordinance number 2556, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. We've had the first reading of Council Bill 3240. May we now have the second reading again by title only if there's no objection.
Council Bill number 3240, an ordinance regulating the detection and elimination of illicit discharge in the city's stormwater system, providing for enforcement, repealing in part ordinance number 2556, and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. And we do have a staff report. Turn it over to our Public Works Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councilors. I'll keep this fairly short if I can. This is basically an ordinance that's required by DEQ to meet the requirements of our water quality management plan to meet the TMDLs on the Pudding River. DEQ has required us to make this a little bit more of a hammer for the stormwater. We currently, like you said, we're revoking some of the, repealing some of the parts of the ordinance that we have right now, which is our sewer use ordinance, which covers a small portion of the stormwater. And this will allow us to meet the requirements and not be designated as a higher target on DEQ's enforcement to not meet these requirements with this ordinance by council. With that, it's about all I got.
Any questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
So I read this because I've heard about some controversy in some other communities in Oregon about similar, so I really dug into this one trying to understand it. Is there potential impact on homeowners, or is there, that's what I'm mainly concerned about?
There is an impact on homeowners if they are discharging into the storm sewer with things that they shouldn't be, as in pesticides or pathogens and things like that, like an illegal connection. And those type of things. But if you're just normally discharging stormwater off of a roof drain and that kind of things, there's no impact on the public.
Okay, so you'd have to be doing something
illegal, correct?
Yeah, I'm
yes.
just trying to wrap my head around it. I'm like,
Yes.
okay,
No,
this
we're
sounds
not.
horrible.
We're not regulating just regular stormwater. It's any of the discharges that are added to that stormwater.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Any other discussion?
How do you identify people that are doing this?
There's a lot of different ways. We're going to end up doing a lot of monitoring on the storm system and a lot of flow data. We have to do a lot of testing, so then we'll be able to go back up the system and look for things, like as we're cleaning the system, if there's illegal connections, we'll be able to know that they're attached where they aren't supposed to be and those type of things, or we'll have dye testing that we can do on some of the properties and find out if they are connected illegally.
And it's worth noting, we find them from time to time.
Correct.
So this is not just the guy that pours motor oil.
Not just that person, but it does give us more teeth to actually deal with that person. Correct.
I wasn't thinking about illegal connections, but that makes sense.
Correct. Yeah.
May we have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Morris?
Aye.
Counselor Shaw?
Yes.
Counselor Wilk?
Yes.
Counselor Carney?
Aye.
Counselor Cabrales?
Yes.
Counselor Cornwell?
Yes.
Council Bill 3240 has been duly passed. May we have Council Bill number 3241 introduced, please?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to introduce Council Bill number 3241.
Thank you. Council Bill 3241 has been duly introduced and is a resolution, and as such requires one reading. May we please have the reading by title only if there's no objection?
Council Bill number 3241, a resolution authorizing the transfer of 1/2.40 FTE from the Transit Fund to the General Fund for the fiscal year 2023-2024.
Thank you. And we do have a staff report. Tony?
Just briefly explain what we're trying to do here. We currently have that part-time position filled that does grant management for the Transit Fund. But because of additional needs within the city, and we have a we have a full-time position for a cashier in the finance department that we have underfilled with a part-time position. By pulling these together, we're going to be able to give additional support for grant management and also budget and budget management throughout the year. It's a need that we've identified that we needed to do, but because we budget not only dollars in each fund, we budget the positions. It requires us to come to council to move this position. We're not increasing the full-time equivalents in the city as a whole, but we have to move it from the transit fund to the general fund, and we need your permission to do that.
It's worth noting too that, I mean, this is an efficiency move, but also we've seen an increased demand for grant management services.
Yes, we have.
With the success we've had with getting grant dollars put into Woodburn, typically it require a lot of paperwork administration, reporting, data collection, financial reporting, and so we're kind of a victim of our own success when it comes to that. And we'll probably have more conversations about that down the road as well.
Consolidating it under finance will allow us to support all of the departments that are doing the grants instead of just the transit department.
Yep, makes sense. Any discussion? May we have a roll call vote then, please?
Counselor Cabrales?
Yes.
Counselor Carney?
Yes.
Counselor Cornwell?
Yes.
Counselor Wilk?
Yes.
Counselor Schaub?
Yes.
Counselor Morris?
Yes.
Okay, Council Bill 3241 has been duly passed. Thank you. Moving on, we have one planning commission issued, land use issue to call up if so requested. Design review, street adjustment, variance application package for the grading Civic Building C project at 2775 North Front Street. Anyone on the council wish to look at it? No. Moving on. City Administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to back up a little bit to the agreement that was reached last Friday with Community Action, the City of Woodburn, and Ray of Hope today. We're going to be moving forward with our role in that, which includes an ARPA allocation to Community Action. I want to tell the council, as part of the package that happened on Friday, we're also going to be offering up a $10,000 grant to Ray of Hope today to help fund their operation through February and the transition with Community Action. We're also going to be committing some other support services to helping improve the site. You're going to see a lot of work happen at that site, including, I think, the demolition of the dilapidated house that's there. We'll create more space. There'll be some fencing. There's going to be quite a bit of work after March when Community Action starts to take over. But mostly I want to tell the council that, council recall that we had a conversation about compliance with the Boise case. You also may have seen in the news that case has been referred to the Supreme Court. There's an 8th Amendment case out of Boise. There's a state law that mimics that court ruling that regulates how we control camping in the city. The city was looking for a suitable site to help comply with the Boise case and now the state law, and this agreement with Community Action will satisfy that for the city council. I told you we'd come back with a recommendation of potential sites. We do some analysis. This really seems to be the best opportunity for the city to comply with state law and that Boise case. So I just wanted to mention that to you. I think it's a pretty big deal. Ray of Hope today, the Neighbors Program, our team, and Community Action, have all come together to collaborate, I think, in a really positive way. And, it was, there was a lot of effort and work went into getting us to this point amongst all those groups. I'm looking forward to seeing the community action presentation to the city council in upcoming weeks. And then finally,
Scott,
also,
before you
yeah.
move on,
I'm sorry.
I should probably clarify, and I've said it before, but I am on the board for Community Action. It is a non-paying volunteer position, but I am real impressed so far with what they're doing.
I have a question.
Yes, Councilor.
Who's managing the whole program? Is it our staff or?
No, Community Action will be managing the program on site.
But you said we're taking it over. What does that mean?
Well, the takeover is the Community Action taking over the control of the site through a lease agreement from Ray of Hope today, or rather the church that owns the site and is managed by Ray of Hope today. So it gets a little complicated. The city's role is going to be support it with some equipment, some removal of some stuff on site to help fire access and deal with fire life safety issues. There will be some support of the city in that regard, but we're not going to have a role in operating the facility.
Is the city paying for the cleanup of the area, the remodel, I guess?
Community Action has a plan for that, and that'll be part of their presentation, I'm pretty sure. But there is a site plan that will include fencing and the removal of that dilapidated house, which is a nuisance, that will then provide support for the parking and other space for the site, allow other types of uses. There's some storage containers on the site that need to be moved to provide fire access and other things like that. The city can assist with those things.
And we don't need approval from the neighbors before we move forward on all this removal of?
They are doing some community action and going and talking to the neighbors.
There will be some community outreach and conversations that will happen. It will happen kind of quickly. One of the things that I was hoping that this issue would have been resolved by the end of the calendar year, but it is a complicated matter and there are many parties involved, and it took more time to sort of work through the financial details and the operational details than we anticipated. But I'm happy to say we're there. I'll definitely ask them to talk in detail about their plan for the site when they come to the council.
And they'll present how many spaces they'll have available?
Yeah.
And hours of operation?
Yes, all of that.
Okay.
Yes, all of that will happen. I'm sorry, is there more questions?
Yeah, just real quick, Scott. So in the gap between now and March 1st, which I'm happy March 1st will be coming soon, what's going on over there now? Because it's not looking good.
Well, what's happening, my understanding right now is that the 3-day-a-week operation continues. It's 10 to 2, 3 days a week, if I remember correctly, in terms of the drop-in shelter. Drop-in services, and that will continue through February. There was a financial situation that occurred where they couldn't afford to operate it through February, so the city will provide a $10,000 grant as part of this deal to maintain that 3-day-a-week service through the transition into March 1st.
And is that neighbors versus neighbors helping neighbors, or is that Ray of Hope?
It is to be operated by Ray of Hope today.
Okay, thank you.
They also got a couple $1,000s from Salem Hospital.
Yes, they've raised some funding from other sources also to continue the program through this month as well. Yes, I'm not familiar with all the details on that.
Okay.
Okay, this display case, you may have noticed this walking in. It's not quite done. There'll be doors here. The question was, how did this get there? And I said, it was the mayor's fault.
Sorry, guys.
Right there,
I wanted
but
pictures of each counselor up there.
that's right.
I thought it was for Scott's
Right in there. Yes, I'm putting my Grammy right here.
Senior first citizen right there, right?
Yeah, no, but seriously, this the mayor did ask if there was a place where we could put our city-wide and other items that highlight the city and some of the success the city has had, and there really was no place for that. Okay, and so that's what this is. And I'm not sure what's going to go in there. We've got a lot of things, Main Street Awards. We've had a lot of accolades of the city given to us over the years, and this will be a nice thing that can be managed over time, and we can rotate and highlight things in there. We wanted it to look nice and fit in with the decor of this room. We want it to be, a quality piece, because this is where the council's business is done. Like I say, the glass doors are coming, but that's what this is.
So there'll be glass doors put in.
And then finally, this is a very interesting piece of information that came to me today from the planning department. You may have heard me rail against the census population statistics that are managed out of Portland State University and how I think they're completely inaccurate for Woodburn for a lot of reasons. So the planning department's been pushing back on this a little bit. Because of Chris's efforts, they did update our census data. I still think it's wrong, but it has increased over what the prior estimates were. So the city's population has gone from 27,044 to 28,483. Now I think we're more than that, but it's worth noting that based on the population statistics by the census, the city has now leapfrogged over West Lynn, Forest Grove, Wilsonville, and Tualatin. And we now fall right underneath McMinnville, and we're the 19th largest city in the state of Oregon. Thought that was of interest.
Let the school district know. They need to know that.
Very good.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to council reports, Mayor, Councilor Morris.
I have nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Shutt.
You know, I'm just excited about all the things that are happening in our city, and the growth comes with some consequences at times, but you know, to hear the presentation from Liberty House was just amazing that they would put such resources here in our town.
Yeah.
Councilor Cornwell.
I wanted to share that I enjoyed attending, I'm not sure, the Fireman's Banquet. I'm not sure exactly the official title
Fire
of
District.
it. Yes, but we celebrated a lot of men and women that have dedicated their lives to protecting our community, and it was a grand night, and we had really good food and good fellowship.
Well, you're on that subject. I was going to mention that too. I think it's beneficial. There were at least 4 firemen that were recognized. And I think that we should make a point of recognizing them throughout the whole city. For years of service, James Gibbs who's our fire marshal, was 5 years of service. Letters of appreciation were for Dylan Selleck, firefighter engineer. A letter of commendation for Jordan Giacomucci, who's an engineer paramedic. Rookie of the Year was Nate Marabella, who's a volunteer firefighter. And the Volunteer of the Year was Jeffrey Robinson, volunteer firefighter. So.
And Ward Hirschberger was there. Always remember him.
Yeah.
They're starting to call him the last responder.
So it was a good evening, and yeah, the fire department was out there in whole, and even several members of the police department came and showed their unity and support for the fire department. So it's much appreciated. Councilor Corrales.
Nothing to share.
Councilor Carney.
Nothing to report.
Saving it all till the next meeting.
Yes.
And, you know, we'll have extra time for you. Couple things that I wanted to say quickly. Going out to the fire district was a good event. Councilor Schaub was also present at that meeting. And then a week later, just this last Friday, Councilor Schaub invited some of us to go to the senior state tea. I guess that was Thursday. And coffee. They don't drink tea, coffee. And gave a presentation on the city's status, kind of what Councilor Wilk was just talking about it, how our growth and good things going, and an opportunity to talk about the need for a community center. And to be honest, it was positive coming from the seniors. It definitely, they didn't badmouth the city for anything, but we're definitely interested in the need for redoing the pool and the community center and growth. So it was a very good presentation. I think Scott and Councilor Schaub and the police chief was there, and McKinsey ran them. And so yeah, it was good. Then I had another opportunity to, the city, actually it's League of Oregon Cities, it sponsors a annual event, gives scholarships away to certain high school students who write a good essay on what they would do to be mayor for a day. And so I was asked to go to the high school at 2 different classes and talk about what I do for a day. And it was actually was interesting. Actually, not what I do for a day, but what the mayor's duties and responsibilities and the good council that we have and working together. And it was interesting. Not a whole lot of questions from the one with the first class was juniors, freshmen, and sophomores. Second class, juniors and seniors. Not a whole lot of interaction. They were probably bored. I probably corrupted a lot of their lives for the future. But one thing I found real interesting, I asked the class, we kind of getting talking and ran out of things to say, and I said, okay, what's important to you guys from Woodburn? What are the assets that Woodburn has? And they had trouble coming up with assets for Woodburn. I mean, one person mentioned diversity, and so we talked about the diversity of Woodburn for a little while. One mentioned the Settlemyre House, which was good, and so we could talk about that for a while. Company stores. So then I came up with some, the museum, and I asked Engine 1785. Not one person, 2 classes, 30 people each, knew what 1785 was. Okay, and I asked, where is it? Not a clue. Okay, how many of you are from Woodburn? They all raise their hand. How many of you know where the water tower is? They all raise their hand. Well, now they know where Engine 1785 is. We talked about that. But yeah, so there's things that we can do better. You know, Jesse's, we talk about parks and there's so many good things that we do. And just we need to let our people know. And I appreciate you're the ones that do all this. So we're good. Woodburn's good. With that, I would entertain a motion to